right, so we're here today to talk about if red pill is a force for good or not. So I'm sure you're thrilled about that.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'd say like starting off, I'm going in probably just more like agnostic than anything. I don't have
That's
like a
good.
super strong opinion on the topic, so
Agnostic is good. Agnostic is very good. That's how I tend to approach things and will always approach things.
Mhm.
Um, but it's funny because I had a conversation with someone named Quibbles Over Coffee. This dude and me, we talked about, I think on Monday. We talked a little
Mhm.
bit about red pill or intersexual dynamics. And it was a good
Mhm.
conversation. I gotta say, that dude thinks way faster than I do. So
I've heard that name
sometimes,
before, actually.
yeah, you have you?
Yeah, I don't know where, but yeah, I've heard
He's a
that name before.
he's a small YouTuber, but like the thing is, I don't know if he posts on his YouTube anymore. Um,
Mm.
I don't know. I just see him like appearing in YouTubers like debates and stuff. So he definitely does
Mm.
debates. I just don't think he really records a lot on his own channel. It's
I
interesting.
see.
Yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, so we talked about it, and so I guess I'll kind of go into my opening statement, my kind of thesis or my theses on what I tend to view the red pill as.
Hmm.
But very simply, actually, hold on. Sorry. Let me just open this. Okay. So simply, what I view the red pill as is a framework of knowledge that helps men understand the complexities of intersexual dynamics. It helps us understand the nature of women, the nature of society, like basically basic history that many of us have not known. And essentially, what the red pill is it's a data packet. It's an open source uh, network of information that allows us to understand the world better. In the same way that we've all watched The Matrix and we saw how there's a blue pill and a red pill. The blue pill
Mm.
means to stay plugged into the machine and stay blind to the truth of the world. To a what is it? A fantasy world, right? Like a fantasy world that seems okay or better than the alternative, which is the red pill. The red pill
Yeah.
is kind of a grittier version of the truth, but it is real. And while there's many unpleasant things in that real world, it is the truth, and we are ultimately after the truth. So, what the red pill attempts to do is give men the knowledge to make
Hmm.
informed decisions in the world around them. And this specifically goes into the idea of women and how do we interact with women. That is how I see the red pill.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, sounds okay so far. So it's just yeah, just knowledge about how to interact with women in the real world. Yeah, I mean, okay. But so I mean, so far yeah, it doesn't seem that bad,
Okay.
I guess.
Well, what's your thesis? So I'm curious what your thesis is on the red pill. What are your preconceived notions or just your anecdotal evidence or whatever your thoughts are on the red pill currently?
Yeah, like I said, I'm relatively agnostic about it. The only thing I know is that, there's obviously I've heard of extremes, that seem kind of just strange to me. Like, I think I told you last time when we were setting this up. Um, the only thing that I really have associated with Red Pill is people like Andrew Tate, stuff like that, which obviously I don't agree with a lot of what that guy says from what I've seen. But I think that I think there probably is some kind of like framework that you come up with is probably useful for that kind of like for that kind of engagement, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So basically, Andrew Tate is like the extent of what you understand about the red pill.
yeah, pretty much.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that's great. So we'll start there. So the way the red pill views Andrew Tate is that Andrew Tate, I would not say is a representative of the red pill. I would say
Hmm.
that Andrew Tate has been riding on the wave of the red pill. I would say that two really powerful ideas combined at the same time, and those two ideas were the red pill and Andrew Tate. But these two
Mm-hmm.
things are separate. The red pill is the idea of kind of like unveiling a truth about the world, about females that men on a wide scale just didn't understand, which is like how females really operate, like their true nature. And I would say that Andrew Tate kind of got in as this was rising up. And Andrew Tate himself is a very, I would say, charismatic, exciting, and entertaining masculine figure. And I would say because of those traits, combining him with the red pill is like this super explosion that
Mm-hmm.
rose to his fame. So when he was going on all the red pill podcasts and talking to men, I would say
Yeah.
that Andrew Tate's very articulate. I would say that he's very,
Mm-hmm.
very intelligent, and he's also
Mm-hmm.
really, really funny. Like if you've ever seen his stuff, he makes some great jokes, dude. Really. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, he's also kind of playing a character, and I think it's
Right.
baked into the fact that a lot of people understand that he's playing a character.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least I think many people would realize it, and that it's hard sometimes to tell if he's doing it ironically or
Mm-hmm.
sarcastically, or if he's like intending to. Well, I think that he does show us glimpses of like his true self when he gets more serious, but a lot of the time he's just being an entertainer. And so the reason he's not red pill is
Mm-hmm.
because Andrew Tate tends to conflate the ideas of hypermasculinity with the red pill. Meaning he's
Mm-hmm.
saying you must go to the gym every single day. You have to smoke cigars. You have to earn millions of dollars. Um, you have to not be a brokey, right? And he's saying if you do all these things, you're gonna get lots of women. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's necessarily incorrect. Um,
Yep.
but the thing is, hypermasculinity is not the same thing as the red pill because red pill is just knowledge. Andrew
Mm-hmm.
Tate is a category of red pill, meaning
Mm-hmm.
that when the red pill tells us descriptively what is, because it's decentralized, what we're going to have
Mm-hmm.
is lots of denominations what do I want to say? Arise. Sort of like the Christian church, right? The Christian
Mm-hmm.
church in the 1500s underwent something called the Reformation. I'm not sure if you know much about this, but up until that point, the church was traditionalist, meaning that they were hierarchical. They had a hierarchical structure in which
Mm-hmm.
they listened to the biblical text in one specific way.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody followed that hierarchy. They had to because they were under the leaderships of the patriarchs or the pope, depending on if you were Eastern Orthodox or Catholic. But in the
Mm-hmm.
Reformation, Luther essentially led the way towards the decentralization of the Bible. And with Protestantism led to several, many, probably hundreds, okay, dozens to hundreds of denominations of Christianity popping up. And the reason why
Mm-hmm.
this is because when you decentralize knowledge, everybody's going to have their own interpretation of it. So, in the same way, red pill is decentralized, and you're going to get many different flavors of the red pill. You're going to get
Yeah.
Andrew Tate's flavor of the red pill, his prescriptions of how you ought to live your life, which is hypermasculinity, earning millions, um, bag and hose, stuff like that. And then you're going to have your fresh and fit denomination of the red pill, who are going to, I would say, a little bit more down to earth than Andrew Tate, meaning do what you can in your situation, work hard, be masculine, and just keep putting in the effort. And then you're going to have all kinds of other different denominations. And so that's the nature of the red pill. Andrew Tate is one denomination of the
Mm-hmm.
red pill, but he doesn't speak for the red pill as its entirety. So does this all make sense so far?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, so basically it sounds that yeah, you draw a distinction between basically what like someone who's probably like more extreme, like Andrew Tate, and like what I guess you the sort of denomination that you affirm, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, that makes sense to
Um
me.
yeah. And like like I said, I don't disagree with everything Andrew Tate says. I just think he's leaning into the character. I think
Mhm.
he's joking a lot, and it's hard to tell what he's joking about, what he's not joking about. Lots of people will take
Mhm.
his words out of context, saying he's like he's like this horrible drug trafficking, woman trafficking person, whatever. I think a lot of that is taken out of context. Um,
Mhm.
Again, it's hard to know with all the misinformation, around the internet, like what's true, what's not, what's a rumor, and what's verified.
Mhm.
There's so much stuff going around that. But if we just take the man himself and the ideas that he espouse, not necessarily his character, I don't think his ideas are all necessarily wrong.
Mhm. Okay. Um. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. To be honest with you, beyond like the sort of like just some extreme clips, haven't listened. I don't think I've even watched a full like video that actually from Andy Tate ever. So, all I know is like just clips I've seen. Okay. Yeah. I don't think I'm opposed to the idea that there's probably some things that he says that are probably like have some merit. Uh. Okay, I guess when it comes specifically to like the knowledge that that you said that the red pill provides, I guess do
Mhm.
you have like some examples of ones that you find like useful? I guess that I
Yeah, I do.
because
I have a whole
yeah,
list of
yeah.
them. I prepared it just for you.
Okay, cool. All right,
All
yeah, we'll
right.
go do that.
So the first claim about the red pill, which I think we've already gone over, is that it's strictly information. That's the most
Yes.
important understanding of the red pill we need to understand. The red pill is a decentralized source of information. So information isn't good or bad, it's neutral. You can destroy with information and you can build with information. So the red pill is information, and you can be a bad red pillar, you can be a good red pillar, however we define those terms. But the importance is
Mhm.
that coming to terms with the red pill is it is descriptive, meaning it describes reality. And then what's
Right.
going to get into more controversy is the prescriptive nature to it, which is what do I do with this information? So,
Mhm.
like one of the things I'll notice about the red pill or like intersectional dynamics is,
Mhm.
in my belief, I see masculinity as being devalued, and I've seen masculinity has been going downhill for far longer than I've been alive, but
Mhm.
probably at least to like the 50s or something like this. I would say that masculinity has probably been going downhill with the
Mhm.
advent of freer liberal societies. That's not to take away against liberal societies. I just think that people um, take for granted the privilege that masculinity provides to society. Meaning,
Mhm.
masculinity is the idea of doing things even when you don't want to do them. It means controlling your emotions to the degree that you are being what should I say? You're restricting your emotions for the betterment of yourself and the people around you. So even when you don't feel like waking up at 4 a.m. to go to work, you
Mhm.
have to do that for your family, or you have
Yeah.
to do that for yourself. You have to do that for people that you care about, and that's what it means to be masculine. It means doing things that are hard, doing things that you don't want to do, but you have to do them because you're looking at the betterment. You're investing in your future, essentially. But I've seen that masculinity seems to be devalued. I think society makes things easier, and because we have video games and fast food and corn, men tend to, take the path of least resistance, and this is kind of destroying masculinity. But also at the same time, we have TV shows, commercials. It just seems like society makes fun of men in general, and I think that's because they believe men are the only ones who can take it, right? So if we started making fun of black people, or if we started making fun of women, they would say these are minorities. This is awful. This is an atrocity. But
Mhm.
they're like, oh, we can make fun of white men. Why? Because white men will take it. They won't start like rising up and like rioting and all this shit. Like they're the ones who will take it. Um, but that's just one
Mhm.
example. But I see masculinity as being devalued.
Mhm. Okay. All right. So okay. So the claim is all right. So masculinity is devalued. Hmm. Um. Yeah. I guess I see some of what you're saying. Um. I guess so. Would you say it's being devalued like by just men or like just as society as a whole?
I would say society as a whole, because I think that, well, I think that women women are complex, right? that's
Hmm.
that's a thing to say. I think that women like masculine men, but I will say that there's large divisions of women who would say that masculinity can be toxic, masculinity is unnecessary in current days. But like, I think that they're being they'll have double standards when they're saying that. So they'll say those things, but at the same time they'll be attracted to masculine men. I do
Hmm.
think that there's also large swaths of women who, want traditional men to
Hmm.
be a mainstay of society, but I would say that their voices aren't particularly loud right now. I would say that the voices that are loudest are probably the more extreme of the feminist occultists, I guess.
Hmm. Okay. Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like the only thing that I really have, I guess that I only like, my thoughts on it is just like I do think there's probably like some truth on some level of what of that point that you brought up. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just because it's very variable. Obviously, I think that there's obviously some for some men that having a more I guess masculine approach probably would be beneficial. And I think that the inverse is probably true for some other men. It's definitely, but yeah, I definitely think I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just think probably depends, I guess, on the situation. But yeah,
Mhm. That's true. I mean, so like, what do you think
mm,
overall? Do you think that masculinity is being devalued? It's not being devalued?
hmm um,
Just on your
yeah, I guess,
experience, I guess.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I would say definitely there's probably not as much of I guess you can say social pressures as there used to be to uphold sort of masculine values, the idea that like as you mentioned, needing to do what needs to be done and like in sort of vague sense.
Yeah,
And I do think that there definitely is some sort of value of having those sort of pressures. Like obviously to an extent. Um,
of course.
yeah,
I don't think we should
so
force those pressures to, you know, I don't think we should
yeah.
force those pressures into reality, like many right wing nationalists would want, or Christian
Yeah.
nationalists.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, definitely yeah, I don't think I disagree with that at all, to be honest. Yeah, it does seem like probably is some value to that in terms of like getting people to like at least on an individual level to engage in like taking more responsibility to benefit themselves.
Okay, cool. Um, so I'm glad we agree on that one. I've got a bit of a more controversial one here, which I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on. This is a more popular claim in the red pill space. I'm not sure if you've heard it before, but the claim is men must become, women just are. And so the idea here is that men and women are fundamentally different. Okay, they're different in their teleology, meaning their purpose. Their purpose is different. They're different in
Mhm,
their biology, very very separate. But the
mhm,
idea is that men are creatures that have, they're sort of like exponential interest, if you know that concept in economics, or exponential growth, where they are
mhm,
slowly rising in value, and they, as they rise in value, they speed up their value because they're building towards something, right? They invest in their future, they invest in their status and their skills and their competencies, And then, somewhere around maybe in like their 30s or their 40s, they're probably at their most valuable because they are the most put together. Um, they have peaked in masculine performances, which is things like protection, gaining resources like money,
Mhm.
becoming competent, becoming charismatic. And
Mhm.
so women are kind of antithetical to this, where instead of building up their value over time, women are at their peak value in their more youthful years. So I think the numbers were something like women are the most attractive in between uh, 20 to 25 or something like that. But like the average number is like 23 is like the peak value, but it is around like 20 to 25 years old is like their peak maximum natural attractiveness.
Mhm.
So instead of building their value, they have most of their value given to them biologically. And so this is why you'll notice that young women are kind of revered in society, especially I would say in TV, um, video games. Like if you just look all around us, who are the most drawing forces of nature? I would say probably in the world, the most like uh, charismatic forces of nature would be like young women because they have this sort of like drawing to them. What's the word I want to use? They have this kind of they have this like attraction to them that pulls everyone in. And I think it primarily has to do with their aesthetics, but I think it's a combination of their aesthetics and from a young age they're socialized properly, and because their beauty plays a part in their socialization, they're more equipped when they get into their younger adult years because they know how to deal with men, because men are always or boys are always asking them out on dates. They're with their girlfriends and things like this, and because they're so um, socially educated in their formative years, they have
Mhm.
this they have this basis, this foundation when they get into their young adulthood, where they're much more socially integrated than I would say young men are, and that is primarily because of their beauty. So if you have their beauty as their basis, they also are more
Mhm.
socially calibrated than then in their younger adult years compared to men. And because of this, they become this very powerful, like attractive force. Um, but what do you think of that? I guess.
Yeah, I guess my question there would be like, would you not say that like attractive men in the same age group aren't equally like socially well equipped?
No,
Like,
no, I don't.
you
I
don't think
don't think
so?
so. I don't think so. I would say this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that for men, attractiveness helps, but it's not nearly as significant as it is for women. And the reason why is this. Well, okay. I think that men are just not as aesthetic as women are. So like as a basis, men aren't as aesthetic as women are. And this could be some part of psychology that we don't fully understand yet. It probably has something to do with symmetry. I would say that most women are more beautiful than average men. Most men. And the reason why probably has something to do with like their symmetry, their wide appeal to everyone. Women attract not only men but also women. Whereas men sort of just attract women, they don't really attract men. But also, men's value is kind of built on their abilities rather than their attractiveness. So I don't know if so when I go to a middle school or a high school and I look
Mm-hmm.
at the most popular boys aren't necessarily the most attractive boys. Sometimes they are, but the most popular
Mm-hmm.
boys are the boys who are the best football player, the best soccer player, the best gymnast, the funny guy, the public speaker. These are the guys that seem
Mm-hmm.
to be the most popular, and this can be the case with girls. Although I would say it's much to a lower degree. Whereas if you look
Mm-hmm.
at who are the most popular girls, the most popular girl is the most beautiful girl, and like the most popular girls are the most beautiful girls. But it's not the same for men. I don't know if you have
Mm.
this experience in school, but yeah, if you look at the hierarchies in schools, what you'll notice is that the like I said before, the best or the most popular men are the men who get things done. Like they're the guys who know a lot of people. They're good networkers. They're good athletes. Um, things like this.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably definitely one thing that where my experience probably differs quite substantially because at least from my
Mm.
experience I find that usually the most when I was in school the most popular boys were generally pretty attractive like obviously they did also have like accomplishments to their name like as you mentioned like being like the head of some of like either like a certain like football club or whatever. Like they'd have some accomplishments to them. But I do think that there generally was some component of attractiveness that also played into it for them.
I actually
But I
agree
don't
with
know.
you
That's
there. I agree with
hmm
you there. And I don't know what it is. Like I literally don't know what this is. But
hmm
and you can tell me if you've seen this phenomenon or not. This is
hmm
super weird to me. Um, but what I've noticed tends to happen
hmm
is that, and this is so weird to say out loud, but like I've just
hmm
noticed this pattern in my life. I've noticed that attractive men, or at least a
hmm
lot of attractive men, tend to be good at stuff. And I don't know why that is. Like if you think about like the best athletes, why are the
hmm
best athletes attractive? Why are like some of like the best speakers in your school attractive? Like why is that the case? Have you noticed that?
hmm
It's almost like the two are intertwined. I don't know if that's a function of biology or if that's a function of social conditioning, where like men who are attractive maybe get more opportunities and then they become more socially calibrated in the same way that women are. So like
hmm
a young man who's more attractive than other young men will, in not a gay way, earn the admiration of other men, and like
Yeah.
from that point he will network better, he will have more opportunities, he might even have more pressure, he'll definitely have
hmm
more mentors, and this leads to opportunity which allows him to excel faster. I don't know which one presupposes the other, but I have noticed that generally speaking attractive guys, or at least not like the most attractive guys, but like they have to have like an attractive basis, tend to be good
hmm
at shit. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a correlation there. Yeah, I guess it's I mean it's hard to attribute which one is like which way it starts at because like I guess one thing could also be the case which is that more attractive guys probably are more likely to have kind of the going back to that thing about masculinity we were talking about where they're probably more likely to have been working on themselves, like stuff like going to the gym and actually actively trying to go towards self-improvement, and that may be what's enabling them to be like good at things, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
There is that possibility, or it could, I guess, as you mentioned, the other way around. It could just be the fact that from their attractiveness, sorry, is what stems the other things. But it is hard to figure out where like the kind of like a chicken and the egg situation, which one began first.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
and I've also noticed. I listen to a lot of Michael Sartain, because
hmm
dude is a fucking machine when it comes to facts, and he's got so much information, and it's just always so educational to listen to him speak.
hmm
But he does say this many times that IQ
hmm
or intelligence and attractiveness are genetic. At least the basis for them are genetic. So
hmm
it's interesting to think to the idea that um, over time, attractive and intelligent people have, decided to get together and create families and
hmm
not only raise their kids with values of competency, meaning they drill into their kids' work ethic, but also
hmm
there's like the genetic component of intelligence and attractiveness and how those two um not correlate but like combine. And so I wonder
hmm
if there is like a case to be made that that like attractive and smart people might be attracted to each other, or like also specifically when it comes to women always say that they like smart men. Now obviously I think they like attractive men more than they like smart men, but their favorite kind
Mhm.
of men are the men who have a base level attractiveness but then are smart. You know what I'm saying? So like their preferred man will be like at least a 5 or a 6 in attractiveness,
Mhm.
and then if he's like a 7 or an 8 in intelligence, the women will like that man who's a 6 versus a man who's 8 in attractiveness and like a 6 or a 5 in intelligence. And I think that that kind of shows the difference between what men and women value. Women value competency. They do value attractiveness, but not as much as men do. But they what they value more is competency and knowledge versus what men value more, which is like attractiveness and femininity.
Mhm. Yeah. That definitely could be a thing. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about that because I remember there was like I don't know if yeah, you're probably aware as well, was there was there's been like a whole sort of cultural discussion about the whole idea behind like sort of the rise of loneliness in men particularly, right?
Yeah.
I think yeah, there was like I remember seeing there's like a lot of debate over like statistics regarding like has the number of like men who have not been in a relationship like increased over time versus women and all that. um
And then
yeah
there's the
and
famous statistic, like
mhm.
1 out of 3 men haven't had, sex in a year or something like that.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Yeah, so that was yeah, I think that also is like probably has something to do with yeah, because I don't know, like it's been so long since I looked into it, but I remember there was like there was some like confusion or like a misunderstanding of like because people like there was this funny graph that people used to show up where it was like that there was like this idea that like all the women like tend towards the most attractive men,
Yeah.
and then like yeah, that
Wait,
left all like the
I think I know what you're talking about. Are
yeah
you talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
the guy who's behind a camera and he makes all the drawings and stuff?
I don't know.
Homath? Do you know Homath?
Oh, I think I've heard of that term before. Yeah.
Yeah, Homath is a YouTuber and he'll like draw all these pictures and stuff. And he
Oh,
famously
okay.
drew this picture of like it's like men and women are lined up like in a
Mhm.
hierarchy, and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the men will go across, one up and one down for their women. It's like a
yeah.
5 man will go for a 4, 5, and 6 woman. But then if you look at the women, it's like from 1 to 10, like all of them go for like the men who are like 6 and up or 7 and up.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I think the graph that I was talking about kind of was showing kind of like the similar thing. Yeah, probably did originate from those sort of circles.
Right,
Yeah, I
right.
do remember. Yeah, there was like a I don't remember. There was like some I saw an article that was kind of going over like whether or not that was true or not, like from surveys and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
like yeah, there's definitely I think that there was yeah, I would need to pull it up just to read it again. I think there was like some findings that like it's not necessarily true. I think that like there is some evidence that like people generally like both men and women kind of actually do find partners usually within their like same sort of scale. Um but I don't remember if that was like on a basis of attractiveness or some other variable. I need to find it, but yeah. Yeah, I don't know why I
Right.
brought that up, but yeah, that was
I
yeah.
think I think a lot of that data comes from dating apps surveys and things like that, or not surveys,
Yeah.
statistics.
Hmm.
Data app statistics where they'll find things like the what is it? The top 80% of women
Hmm.
only deem the top 20% of men as viable candidates,
Hmm.
or they find the top 20% of men attractive. So it's like you have the top
Hmm.
20%, top 80% women say that the top 20% of men are attractive. Whereas if you look at the other way, the men at every single levels have no problems with dating women at their same level. So like
Mhm.
men that are threes are fine with women who are threes, or men that are fives have absolutely no problem with women who are fives. But like a woman who's a
Mhm.
four might want a man who's a six or a seven, something like that. And they basically what they show is they'll use I don't know if it's like Tinder or whatever, but like they'll
Mhm.
have the little right and left swipe features where you'll get like a ton of
Mhm.
potential dating partners show up, and then you'll like swipe at them to see who you want or not. And
Mhm.
women will just often just swipe right past the guys who are at their level or a little bit
Mhm.
lower to get to the men who are like the top 20%. At least that's what the dating app seems to show.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I need to look through that stuff again because I did do a bit of a deep dive like a year ago, I think. But yeah, I mean, intuitively, I think that makes sense to me, like honestly, for that to be the case. Um, like just on like a cultural level, that does seem to happen quite a bit. Like, I've seen experience of that of like, sort of women having like generally kind of sort of high standards, like
Mm.
kind of sometimes to an unrealistic degree. Um more so than men. But yeah, I definitely observed that before, like just in my day-to-day life. Um
Okay, so
but
if we look at if we bringing this all back to the claim,
yeah.
what do you think of the claim that men must become and women just are? How much validity do you think that has to it?
Mhm. Um yeah, I mean, I would say that I definitely can see a perspective under which that holds true. Like it's obviously, I think it's very culturally relative in terms of when it is the case versus when not. But yeah, I think that in Western society probably there is like, and in terms of what you mentioned, just in regards to like the fact of just purely, on the basis of attractive men versus attractive women, how much do they need to accomplish versus how much do the women need to accomplish, etc., etc. I think I probably could get on board with the idea that there's probably some level of additional work that men need to engage in to like become something more. Yeah, I don't think I necessarily disagree with the claim.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Hmm.
and the way I see it too, and the way I've had it explained to me is that women and men are just looking for different things. So in
Hmm.
the same way that market economics works, because market economics is based on hierarchical uh, dynamics, is
Hmm.
that men value attractive women, and so therefore women who are attractive go to the top of the hierarchy. But
Hmm.
women value more than just attraction. It's kind of
Hmm.
hilarious. You could make the case that women are like less superficial than men, but I mean I don't see it that way. But it's just kind of
Hmm.
ironic there. But women view more than just attraction. They want attraction. They want competence. They want intelligence. They want
Hmm.
charisma, social awareness. They want all these things because they want like a really well built together man. Whereas men just want like a really hot nice girlfriend. Like everybody wants a
Hmm.
hot nice girlfriend. That's all we want. Um, so it's funny to look at things in those terms. But
Hmm.
um, so we kind of already talked about this. But my next claim is that women are hypergamous, meaning that they tend to date up in the you know I would say in
Hmm.
the attraction dynamics, or in the attraction hierarchy, women will tend to date up while men will date at their level.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we did touch on that a little bit. I think that I've like yeah, intuitively from what I've experienced, I think that I've seen some of that definitely. Yeah, it's just oh, because I was reading something that I think kind of did change my mind on that like some time ago. But yeah, like I said, I would need to pull it up again. But like intuitively, just on like from my personal experiences, I think that yeah, that definitely I see that has does happen, like for sure. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, on face value, I don't think I necessarily disagree with that one either.
Okay, cool. And to be the devil's advocate, like just to be clear, like I've seen. Actually, I'm not sure if this is a point against me. Like I've seen like attractive women with like ugly guys, and I'm like, what the
Yeah, yeah,
hell?
yeah, definitely,
Like
yeah.
I've seen that before, and I don't know if that
Mhm,
reinforces my point. It might, because it just shows that women are looking for more than just attraction. Um, because
mhm,
I would say women are the ultimate authorities, at least like in most of the in like 90% of the dating market. Women are like the arbiters of they're the arbiters of relationships, right? They're the ones who
mhm,
decide how things work, because all men want all women, but not all women want all men. So
mhm,
because women are scarce,
mhm,
um, especially pretty women are scarce, men want that scarcity, and so the women become the arbiters of, okay, I have all these guys that I want to choose from, so I'm going to choose the best one. Obviously, that makes sense. That makes perfect
mhm,
sense that you're going to choose the best one, or the one that you like the most. That makes total sense.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, it's interesting to see like ugly guys with hot chicks once in a while. But I think that just goes to show you that the girl picked that guy for a reason, right? Like if the girl
mhm,
has all these people lining up for her, that guy must be special. Even if he's ugly, he must be special in some way. Like he must be
mhm,
funny, he must be charismatic, he must be like just really fun to be around. He has to have something to going for him, because he's competing with all these other men. So he needs something to set him apart from all of them. So that's,
mhm.
yeah. I guess that
Yeah, no,
does
that
reinforce my point.
yeah, that particular example probably would. I think the if I had to think of one that probably would go against your point is like an example of say like a man choosing say like a less attractive woman over a more attractive woman for like other reasons. That's probably like because that's like the other end of the scale. I don't know how often that happens though, but probably has. I don't know. Probably there are some men who go for women not like on the basis of attractiveness, but like other reasons that they find a particular woman more appealing to them. Um, but yeah, that would be like an example I can think of that would go probably contradict your point a little bit.
Yeah. So
But yeah.
I want you to take a look at this to see if this is hypocritical or not, because I actually don't know.
Mhm,
Um, if you see a guy with an uglier girl,
mhm,
does this reinforce one of two things? Does this
mhm,
reinforce the point that men have less options, and because they have less options they're going for the uglier girl? Or does it counter the whole idea that, actually, wait, I can't see another way. What's the alternative to that, right? So I laid out the one
mhm,
thing.
mhm,
An ugly girl is with an ugly girl is with a better looking guy. And the
mhm,
reason for that is because the guy doesn't have as many options. Do
mhm.
you see an alternative to that scenario?
Yeah, I guess the alternative that I was kind of pointing out was that it could be like similar like to the hypothesis that we made for women, where it's like women seek for something more than attractiveness. We could say that that applies to some men as well. Some men seek something more than just attractiveness,
Hmm.
and that's why they choose the less attractive women, I guess.
Okay, okay. That is the alternative. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Um, intuitively and
totally.
anecdotally,
Yeah,
that seems
yeah,
totally wrong. That seems totally wrong.
yeah.
I can't back that up. I don't think with data, but at least
Hmm.
based on my experience, and I'm gonna be totally superficial with you. Like I like
Hmm.
hot chicks. I don't like I don't like no ugly chicks, bro. But
Yeah, I think
I don't think I'm an outlier for that reason.
mm, yeah, I think
You know?
no, yeah, that definitely makes sense. I think for me, like, and this is my personal like thought, um, like when it comes, like, there's definitely like a certain threshold, or I guess not threshold, but like a certain floor of attractiveness that I would look for. But if if I see like two women who are like above that floor, and one of them has certain like personality traits that I find more engaging to engage, like like I have a stronger ability to engage with, then I have had experiences of like finding like sort of gravitating more towards that woman over someone who's like ugly more attractive, but I have less to sort of relate with, if that makes sense. But obviously, there is still some level. Attractiveness still does matter to me on some level. It's just that once you get past that floor, that's when like certain other differences start to make be more something that I consider more, I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think
Hmm.
that especially in long-term relationships, I would be looking for more than just attractiveness. Like you said, I would have an attractive floor, but I would
Hmm.
be looking for many more traits. Like, do we have good chemistry? Is this going to
Hmm.
be a conducive relationship? Is this going to work? Is this going to fit into my life very well? Is she going to be a good part of my life? So
Hmm.
I definitely do see that. I think that where men and women are different is that men have a higher attractive floor for women, and women have a lower attractive floor for men. Um,
You mean that?
and yeah, what do
Sorry.
you think?
Did you mean to reverse that, or because you're saying that men have a higher standard for,
Yeah,
or
men have a higher standard for a. Oh wait, what?
I thought, yeah, you mean the opposite, or?
Well, okay. Hold on, because this
Yeah,
is where it gets weird. Men
yeah.
value it's. I would say it's indisputable that men value attractiveness as the
Hmm.
most important part, but women don't value attractiveness as the most important part.
Hmm.
So where it gets weird is that. So I think this also plays with the idea that men have less options and therefore their standards are already lower. But with those lowered
Hmm.
standards, they still value attraction more. Does that make sense?
Sorry, could you repeat that? Just that went
Sure.
over my head a
So
bit. Yeah,
So, supply and demand comes very importantly into this situation because um,
yeah.
with what with the options that men have, they will put more value on attractiveness for the options that they have, and for
Hmm.
women with the options that they have, they will put more value on dividing things up on more than just attraction, like the one attraction and hardworking and smart and funny. Um,
Yeah,
so if men have the options of like four, fives, and sixes,
yeah.
um, they will go for the attraction. The attraction will be the sixes. So they'll want the
Yeah.
attraction. But their base floor might be like four for attractiveness. But women
Hmm.
have more options and better options than men. So they'll have options to like six, sevens, and eights.
Hmm.
And their attraction floor will be lower valued than what men would have, where men would have like an attract, like they would value it a six.
Mm.
They would prioritize the attraction. Women would put the attraction at like a six too, because if she has an options to a six, seven, and eight, where the eight's the
Mm.
most physically attractive and the six is the least physically attractive, but the six is also smart, funny, and charismatic, she'll go for
Hmm.
the six. Whereas for the man who's
Mm.
option to physically a four, five, and a six, he'll go for the six, even if the four has a better personality.
Hmm. Right, yeah. Okay. I see. Yeah, I do see what you mean, kind of. Um, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, from my experience, like I guess because when it comes to the floor that I was mentioning, yeah, I guess it also does depend on like the level of how much you can engage with certain women, depending like in terms of their personality. Like obviously, I think there's also like an extent to which like if one is like if there's like two women who are like a six and a four, and like the four is like someone who you're just someone who can just have like a way better conversations with, you're able to talk to more, whereas the six is like they're more attractive, but you just have nothing in common with them. I personally could see myself going with the four there. I don't know about you though, but
Yeah, that's a hard one.
hmm.
I don't know. Like my intuitive response is the six. That's
Hmm.
my intuitive response.
Yeah,
But again, if I'm looking into like a long term
long term.
relationship, that's
Yeah.
a harder one because
Hmm.
where I can see that it would be a conducive relationship that um, even though she
Hmm.
is even if we don't have good chemistry and it's not as
Yeah.
fun to be around them, will
Yeah.
it be a good relationship? And I guess that's where like more of the masculine
Hmm.
and feminine dynamics work into place. Like, is she still going to be? Is she going to play her feminine role even if she's
Yeah.
not as smart as the four? Is she still going to listen to me? Because here's the
Yeah.
thing. Here's the difference. With a six, if she's open to learning and learning from me, and
Right.
going with my plan, like She listens to me. She doesn't necessarily have to be as smart as the 4 is, as long as she
I
listens to
guess.
me and follows my instructions. Because then I can sort of delegate to her tasks and think in the big terms, and she only has to
Mhm.
focus on the short terms. So I can see that as being um, a fine trade, because
Mhm.
even though she's not as smart as the 4, she's still attractive, and attractive is the primary thing I'm looking for. But
Mhm.
I can also lead the relationship and lead for where we're gonna go, and like delegate things to her.
Okay. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I guess we may have like differences there, just in terms of what how much we prioritize attractiveness versus personality and stuff. Yeah. Um. Yeah. But I definitely see your perspective as well. Like in terms of having like yeah, it definitely would be a difficult decision to make. Definitely.
Yeah.
Uh, mm,
Okay. Okay. Cool. 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 So we covered women are hypergamous.
yeah.
We kind of went around with the idea that they are a little bit at least.
Mhm. Yeah. I was actually
um.
thinking
Yeah.
because
Go ahead.
you watch Andrew Wilson stuff too as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. One of the some of the videos that I watched that are like kind of related is the ones where he's on the whatever podcast, and it's like I think he has like a lot of clips where he's like he's talking to certain women, and I think like they ask them to rate themselves, and they usually like
Mhm.
rate themselves way higher than like
He's like, if you're a 6 and I'm a 20. That was on the
yeah,
most recent one. There's like that fat
yeah,
chick sitting across from him. He's like, if you're a 6, I'm a 20.
yeah, yeah. So
Bro.
yeah,
Which
that
is
probably
fucking
plays into it a bit as
hilarious,
well.
dude. Oh
Yeah,
my god. He's so funny sometimes.
yeah.
Um yeah, no, that's absolutely true. But that is and it's interesting because if you look at the Fresh and Fit podcast and the whatever podcast, it's hard to tell like how do we make the firm how do we make the firm commitment to the idea if these are quote unquote natural women that are showing up on the podcast, right? How
Mhm,
do we differentiate to know if they're real women or not? You know, I
mhm,
I tend to believe that they are real women and
mhm,
they see an opportunity and they go for it. Now,
mhm,
there's like a part of me that's battling with the idea of are these women who are a little bit more inclined to attention seeking, right?
mhm,
Because if we go with one of the red pill presuppositions is that women are solipsistic. So
mhm,
they enjoy attention in the same way that men enjoy sex. Um,
mhm.
and so that's a presupposition. I don't know how much backed it is, but it depends how we look at whoever's showing up on the podcast. If normal women are showing up on the podcast, that reinforces the presupposition that women are teaching attention seeking. But at the same time, how do we know that that is what they're doing or why they're doing it? You know?
Mm. Yeah, in terms of that, like, I mean, I they probably are like, I guess, real. But like, it seems that like, I mean, obviously I think these podcasts generally probably bring women who are like really, really extreme. Like most of the women like that when you hear them like talk about their lives and stuff and those kind of things, like, I don't think I've ever met like any woman in my life who's like had gone through similar things or like does similar things than a lot of the women that appear in those podcasts. Like they live very like sort of exceptional lives in a way. Um,
Yeah, that's true.
it is,
Like they've got lots of Instagram models and stuff.
yeah.
But that's why it's hard to tell because it's like it's hard to tell if these are like women who are more on the extreme end of things, like women who are living in I don't know where whatever podcast is, like San Francisco or whatever, wherever they are,
Mhm,
and Miami for the Fresh and Fit podcast. Like these are areas that are exceptionally competitive,
yeah.
exceptionally like party cities, party areas. So it's like for people to go there, and there is some truth to this, to be completely fair. For people
Mhm,
to want to go to like the most intense party cities in the US, that does say something about your character. Not necessarily something negative, but it
yeah.
certainly says something about you. And so the women who go to these cities, but to be fair, women do travel from across the U.S. to get to the
Mhm,
whatever podcast and the Fresh and Fit podcast.
true.
Um, but like they also take a large sampling from the women in Miami, so it's hard to
Right.
tell how much of how much of them is biological responses and how much of them is like socially
Yeah.
calibrated to that specific party city that they're in. You know, it's hard to
Yeah.
make a distinguishment there.
Yeah, like is it nature or nurture? Basically, like is it like a
Yeah,
cultural environment sort of influence or yeah, it's hard to tell always, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Um, okay, cool. So the next topic is going to be a bit more empirical.
Hmm.
Um, and the claim is just that women have more rights than men. And I would say that women are more advantaged legally and socially over men. That would be my claim. And I can back that up. But what are your first impressions on that?
Mm, so legally, I imagine probably what we'd be talking about is like stuff like when it comes to criminal sentencing. I think yeah,
Yeah,
women generally get away with less harsh sentences and like stuff like that, right? Yeah, that's
yeah.
sort of the legal. Mm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've never really looked into it too much on an empirical level, but yeah, like I definitely have seen that argument been brought up before, and yeah, it definitely does seem to happen. Um,
Okay, well then let
yeah,
me run through a few legal things, and you can tell me your thoughts on them.
sure.
So I would say first, under the Constitution, because of the 14th Amendment, there's something called the Equal Protection Clause, which
Yeah,
means that women and men have equal protection under the law, constitutionally speaking.
yeah,
So they have technically equal rights, and if they don't, that's illegal. So that's the
yeah.
first thing. The second thing I would go into is divorce and alimony,
Hmm.
which, when it comes to divorce and alimony, historically, women are more likely to receive alimony.
Hmm.
And to be fair, this again, it's one of those things where it's hard to tell because
Hmm.
women often have less incomes, or women are often more housewives, and men usually have
Yeah,
higher incomes. So it's one of those things where it's hard to tell
yeah.
if it's the case that judges just like women more, or if it's just because men have more women money, they make the case that women don't have an advantage because they're staying at home, so they have no ability to grow in a company like men do. Um,
Hmm.
so there's that criticism, but even
Yeah,
so, women still tend to get more money in divorce court. Then there's
yeah,
child custody, which the law kind of prioritizes the best interests of the child, and that's kind of their standard. But
yeah.
what we'll notice is that women often get primary custody more often, and we don't know why. Again, it's because we're not
Hmm.
sure if women just seem like better caregivers, or if the facts are actually in the case that like men really just are not as good caregivers, which I would argue that's not. I would disagree with that. That men are less good caregivers. I would say men in many instances are much better caregivers because they instill
Hmm.
discipline into their children, and discipline is a huge component um, in success in the world. But yeah,
Hmm.
but in child custody, women often get primary custody over men. Then
Hmm.
there's military service in the draft. Again, women aren't drafted, but they are afforded the right to vote, and they have all other equal protections under the law. So I would say with this one alone, with the freedom from the draft alone, women are already advantaged, and I don't need to bring up any other stats. Like if we just have an intuitive argument, I would say the
Hmm.
draft proves without a doubt that women just have more advantages than men do in the law because they have
Hmm.
that one advantage over men. But then we go into criminal justice, and like you said, women tend to receive less severe sentences for the same crimes. And
Hmm.
this is probably because women are softer. Women are I think we have like this intuitive feeling to care for women. But yeah, so women have workplace protections like the Constitution and the Civil Rights Act and things like this. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts on some of those. So I guess the first one, because I think the first one you brought up was like the 14th Amendment means there's like equal protections. Do you
Yeah,
see that as like I guess why would that mean that women are advantaged? Because that just seems like equality to me.
correct. Okay, that wasn't a case for women advantage. That was setting a
Oh, okay.
basis. I was setting the
Oh, okay.
basis that it's illegal for men to be advantaged over women legally speaking.
I see. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I
All
was
right.
just I was
That
just setting the basis there.
okay. All good. That makes sense. Okay. And then the next one we talked about. What was the point after that? I don't remember. I had
Divorce
a
and
thought about it.
alimony.
Yeah, divorce. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that one is yeah, it is difficult as well because yeah, like in general, like in society, like women are generally the ones who, like as mentioned, like and this also plays into like the point about custody. Like we generally have this like sort of social idea of women being the ones who are like the caretakers of children, right? Like I feel like
Hmm.
that's pretty like socially like the norm.
Yeah.
And so I guess like yeah, like I guess the thought behind those kind of things is that like oh yeah, the if the woman has to be the one to bear like the because obviously like raising a child is like, really expensive, right? And it's like if you get divorced,
Yeah.
um yeah, it makes sense like and the woman is like the more likely candidate to get the child. Like obviously they are the ones who would then have to bear the more like financial burden. So yeah, I guess that's
But to put
probably
up
some.
to
Mhm.
address that point right now, sorry, just put on a pause right now.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It's so funny, and I hate the government. You already know in general, but it's
Mhm.
just so
Yeah.
funny how they treat divorce and alimony money because they do it in
Mhm.
the same way that they do taxes, which is they take a percentage of the money you have rather than like a fee. Like a fee is like a
Mhm.
very accurate amount of money. They're like, okay, I'm raising a kid. I need $500 a month for their basic
Mhm.
expenses, right? That's what I need. Well, that
Yeah.
would be a fee versus no, we want a percentage of your income. So if you're a higher earner, they could take anything from like, like a couple $100 to anywhere to like 10,000, $15,000 a month, which is absolutely insane. Like they can just take a
Mm.
percentage instead of a fee.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I didn't actually know that. It's interesting. Um, yeah, there's probably better ways that it could be done for sure. Um, okay, yeah, that's my general thought on that point. I guess on the next one, yeah, when it comes
Child
to the
custody.
child custody thing, yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of like as I mentioned, I think like yeah, because we do have this impression of women being the primary caretakers. You did bring up the point of like men arguably can also be like just as good, if not better, caretakers in terms of teaching discipline. I
Yeah.
think there definitely is merit to that, but I think that like I don't know. It's like yeah, because it's more of an empirical thing. But I think like there are certain things that like at least from in my personal like life, like I know like for example like if my parents were to get divorced and like yeah, my dad could probably there's certain values that I got from my dad that are like incredibly valuable. But like there's also sort of basic things that I don't know my dad would be able to provide that my mom does. Like for example like having like good meals like as a kid and
Mm.
having those sort of things taken care of me, like the basic things, right? My mom's the one who would enforce all those things, like oh, brush your teeth every night, take a shower, eat like healthy and all that stuff. Um, but like that's just kind of like an anecdotal thing. Like I don't think my dad was ever like the one who's super involved with that. And I wonder like when it comes to families in general, like how much the dad has involvement in those kind of more basic, fundamental like sort of values than versus the mom. I think if I had to take a guess, I'd say generally that's the stuff that the mom does. I don't know about if you agree with that or.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Mhm.
The parental dynamics is something I find very interesting, especially the different parenting methods between the mother and the father. The
Mhm.
masculine parent versus the feminine parent. And I
Yeah,
know I know things have changed a lot in the modern days, where women are becoming more masculine, men are becoming more feminine.
yeah,
But as far as that goes, the way
yeah,
I see it is that currently people have closer relationships with their mother,
yeah,
um, because the mother's relationship to the child is a whole lot more intimate than the father's relationship to the child. In that,
yeah,
as the mother and the feminine role, you ought to have you not ought you often have a more close relationship with them just because of the nature of the mother. The mother carries the child, the mother breastfeeds the child, and the
Hmm.
mother often raises the child in like a nuclear style family dynamic. Um,
Hmm.
Now, I think that even though the mother and the child are closer to each other and often have probably more, more special connections to each other than the father and the child,
Hmm.
I would say that the father, uh, I would say, in simple terms, I would say the mother is like the warm, squishy, uh, feel good side of the relationship, and the father's like the hard, harsh,
Hmm.
uh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps part of the relationship. So I
Hmm.
would say,
Yeah.
in terms of future investment, I would say that the man is the father is the better parental role, meaning he will instill in you values that will be very uncomfortable in the moment, but will
Mm.
be very, very beneficial for your future. And I would say that the mother provides a powerful psychological safety to the child. And so
Mhm.
that the child can grow up feeling unafraid. And because they're unafraid, they can be more expressive and they can be more energetic and they can be more open to learning new things. So I see the optimal combination is when the father and the mother are together and they
Mhm.
balance each other out like that. Um,
Mhm.
but in terms of on a hierarchical scale, if you could only have the father or the mother, I would say that the father is superior in the overall well-being of the child
Mhm.
because you're including the future investment. Because the father cannot provide that psychological warm basis for the child that the mother can, but he will instill a discipline into you that makes you more masculine. If you're a girl or a boy, you will be more masculine when you grow up if you're raised by your father. And you will have a harder work ethic. You will be more long-term oriented. And you could debate that this will stunt their psychological growth or not growth, their
Mhm.
openness. That's very pivotal right there. Their openness. I would say that their openness is like the liberal, the feminine, that is openness. And then the conscientiousness is the masculine harshness. And we're getting into like Jordan Peterson talk now. But like, do you see the distinction I'm making? There's like fundamental differences in those two parenting styles.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can definitely see that as a thing that does happen. Yeah, I'm just not sure if I'm convinced that the father's role is necessarily like if we had to choose between having only just one or the other. Like, I do agree having both is also the optimal, but in the cases where you can only have one, I'm not sure if I'm convinced that having the father's role is more valuable like on its own than the mother's one. That's like yeah, that's a bit of a difficult one to toss up there. Like um
Okay, so cost benefit
yeah.
analysis.
Hmm.
Um, like I said before, the father gives you like the hard boundaries, the discipline,
Hmm.
the inspiration to work harder. The woman gives you like this powerful psychological basis where you become more open because you're more open. You'll probably be more educated. You'll be more curious. You'll be more open to learning and things. Um,
Hmm.
and these are tendencies. Obviously, these aren't like hard drawn facts. These are tendencies.
Yeah, yeah, of
But
course.
between those two things, if you agree with that idea of like um those parental styles, which do you think is a more necessary component or a more effective component?
Um, between uh, hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It really is like a toss-up for me because I feel like we one without the other can, I think, have lead to like a pretty unbalanced sort of view of the world or like lifestyle. Like I don't know, like if you don't have that component that like of sort of valuing, I guess like on the like the mother side you mentioned like having that sort of emotional basis, kind of being more knowledgeable or like willing to have like sort of a curiosity for that kind of knowledge and stuff like that. Like I feel like if you just have that kind of like that independence and stuff like that that like the father maybe like instills, I feel like that could have like sort of more some adverse effects as well where it's like well, an example I was thinking is like, if if you're just taught like, hey, take things in your own hand, and like, you're growing up in like a sort of rough environment, I feel like there is many possibilities for like the child to learn like the wrong lesson from that, and just kind of like get into things that probably aren't good, like like, I don't know, like a sort of maybe like a criminal lifestyle or stuff like that. That's not the most extreme example, but like, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's really difficult. I feel like both
Yeah.
are. Yeah, it's very hard to toss up as a cost benefit analysis. I would have to like think about that a lot more before I could come to like a definitive one.
Um. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's fair. I think partially the reasons for my thesis on this has something to do with some statistics I heard a while ago that I haven't looked
Hmm.
up, so I'm not entirely sure of their um
Yeah.
evidence. But I think it makes sense intuitively. And the statistic is something like single mothers disproportionately raise more people that engage in degenerate acts. So
Hmm.
um, this doesn't mean always. This just means that there's a tendency for it to happen. Single mothers will
Hmm.
raise people who are more likely to, let's say, attack schools.
Hmm.
um, let's say, become thieves, become criminals,
Hmm.
become strippers, things like this. And
Hmm.
disproportionately on the men's side, men who raise their kids, it's a much lower rate for that to happen. And I think the reason for this is because the mother's parental style is it's a very it's a firm foundation in like comfort and like safety, and it encourages openness. But the thing is, openness isn't necessarily always good because openness can lead to bad ideas. And I think that's where the father comes in. The father restricts the openness. The mother opens
Hmm.
you up to the openness, and like the sky's the limit. The what is the world's your oyster? Like you're
Hmm.
curious about everything. You want to learn about everything. You can do anything. And then the father
Hmm.
is there to kind of create the boundaries or to make sure you're not crossing a line.
Hmm.
And so what I see is happening is if you're raised by a single mother, yes, you
Hmm.
will be more open to learning new things, but this can have
Hmm.
an adverse effect if you don't have boundaries, properly established boundaries. Whereas for the
Hmm.
father, where it's true, you won't be as curious and open to learning new things, and have that feeling of emotional safety or physical safety, probably physical
Hmm.
safety. But just you won't have as much openness. The father will still have clear boundaries for you to at least become a good worker or a good citizen, quote unquote. I'm using quote unquote, a good worker
Hmm.
or a good citizen. And so you won't go off into those things. Now, you probably won't have as much satisfaction in life or
Hmm.
psychological health, but you will be safe legally speaking, monetarily speaking.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, in regards to the statistics, because I actually have heard about that before with like single fathers having better outcomes. The thing about that I would that I think what I've heard, what I remember is that I think what probably plays into it is as well is when it comes to like income differences, because I think there's also the simple fact that men generally earn more than women. So I
Mm-hmm.
wonder how much that plays into it as well. It could just be a simple fact that like, because obviously like poverty has a lot to do with crime as well. When you're poor, like obviously like the more poverty usually has leads to more crime. So
Yeah.
so like yeah, that I do wonder how much that plays into it as well. Like it might just like if I had to guess, I would say intuitively that probably makes up a lot of the difference there. Um, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. I would really have to think about whether the values themselves versus like the sort of independent ones that's instilled by the father versus the ones that's instilled by like the mother on a general basis, obviously. I'd really have to weigh that up and wonder which one's more valuable. It's really hard to say to me, like just
Yeah.
on
No,
its own. Yeah.
that's definitely an interesting concept right there. The question of
Yeah.
I do see I am a parental realist though.
Hmm.
I do believe that their parenting styles are
Hmm.
foundationally different, and that does have
Hmm.
a significant effect on them. But I guess what you raised is an interesting point of how much is the parenting style versus the economic um the economic income
Mhm.
that raises you. But like, I don't know, there's like all kinds of counter arguments to this. Like, if you look
Yeah.
at the a lot of the OnlyFans models on the whatever podcast, is like
Mhm.
you'll notice that a lot of them come from good homes, and they just like they're like, yeah, like my family loves that I'm doing this. Like they have a dual parent household,
Yeah.
like their mother and their father together. Um,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of women uh might do OnlyFans and things like this for reasons other than economic factors. But I don't know if that's trailing off away from the point.
Yeah, it might not
Um,
be. If I had to think of why like they might engage with that, even if it's not an economic factor, it could also just be like um could just be like a social factor. Maybe like they I think
hmm,
generally like if I had to guess and like I don't know, like I would say that like probably there was they like most of the women who engage in those kind of things probably have had some kind of difficulties in the home, even if not financially, but maybe like socially, maybe they don't get along with their parents and stuff like that, and that may lead to that. I don't know, that yeah, that would be my assumption there.
hmm, interesting. Okay. Moving
Mhm.
on to the draft. What do you think about that? Men are drafted in the United States Army
Mhm.
if we ever need to. They are signed up for the selective service and they will be drafted into war if it ever comes to
Mhm.
it. But women are not. Even though they have equal rights under the law, women have votes same as men.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm like even though I'm the statist here, like I generally like what the state does on most things. Like I would say that when it comes to military stuff, that's probably where like I tend to be like probably align more with sort of like your view of like I don't really like a lot of what we do in regards to like military spending and all that, and like yes, I probably disagree with the draft in general. But yeah, like definitely, like if we were to have a draft, I would say it probably should be equal. Like I don't think that it should be like if we are good, I think that like yeah, probably we shouldn't have that kind of double standard of like men are the only ones who. So yeah, I think like if I think that probably does on that level. I do agree. It probably that is like a sort of legal advantage that women have for
Hmm.
sure. I don't know how relevant it is in like your day to day life though, because like it only takes place when there's like a war that's gonna occur, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's
so it's
true.
not like so it is an advantage on the legal sense, but it's probably not the most impactful one at all, like in their like day to day circumstances.
I agree with you.
Hmm.
I agree with you. But in terms of legal advantages,
Hmm.
it's undeniably, indisputably a point for women,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Even if it's not currently in use or hasn't been in use for like 30 or 40 years, it's still like a point towards women's advantage in the legal
Hmm.
system. And I think that's kind of the point. Um,
Yeah, sure.
a sidebar, this is hilarious. If I had to
Hmm.
be a nationalist, if I had to be a nationalist, I'd be a
Hmm.
Christian nationalist. Because I see
Okay.
them as the least worst of all nationalists.
Hmm.
And so if I had to have a draft, if we had to have a
Hmm.
draft, I would be in favor of only men being drafted. And that is because I do believe in the value of women. Like I believe that women should be protected and not sent to war. But that's only if I believed in the draft in the first place. I would not want women to be drafted, just because culturally speaking, that's my values. My values are conservative, culturally speaking. So I
Hmm.
definitely wouldn't want to send women to war. I would rather men be forced to go to war instead of women. But that's only if I had to be a statist.
Hmm. What do you think about this though? Actually, I just this thought just came to my head in terms of like legal like sort of advantage. I don't know if you've heard because yeah, I heard this argument from Andrew Wilson again. Like, one of the standard arguments he makes in favor of like patriarchy. He argues for it like purely in like a descriptive sense, where it's like he like what he says is that like um the argument is like if because men are like they're always going to be sort of the enforcers of like societies like laws and everything like that because they have like
uh,
the advantage of force. I don't know if you heard him make that argument
yeah,
before.
power
Um,
doctrine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So he's like, would you say that that's kind of like in a legal sense that could be stated as like a sort of advantage that men have, like inherently?
I wouldn't say that's a legal advantage. I would say that's a, a biological advantage or a advantage of
Hmm.
nature, because
Hmm.
Andrew Wilson's entire argument with force doctrine or power doctrine, I think he calls it
Hmm.
force doctrine, is
Yeah.
that he's not really claiming an ought when he brings up
Yeah.
force
Yeah.
doctrine. He's bringing up
Yeah.
an is. So he's saying
Yeah.
if women wanted to rebel, you couldn't do anything. Like women could not do anything to men because
Yeah.
men are just so significantly more powerful than women
Hmm.
that a war between men and women would be an absolute joke because men are so much more equipped to handle things like engineering and technology, because they have better spatial awareness, they have better spatial comprehension, they're stronger physically,
Hmm.
um, their hierarchies are more hierarchical based, where women are
Hmm.
more communitarian. So women believe in like equality and women are more communitarian. So men would have like, stronger forms of hierarchy, like they'd have president, department of defense, generals, commanders, sergeants. They'd have things like this where women would be like, oh, like we're gonna take turns being commander or something like that. So like there's fundamental differences between men and women, and men would
Hmm.
absolutely overpower women in almost every regard in the physical world.
Hmm.
But that's to add to his case that men are benevolent. Men love women, and because we love women, we would never do this to them. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't see that as a legal advantage, because a legal advantage is, when you're talking legality, you're
Mm.
negotiating. So you're trying to create what should or what ought society look like, and from that point of view, they create legal parameters. Whereas in Andrew's case, in Andrew's argument, he's saying that men are stronger than women. It is descriptively true that men could defeat women easily.
Hmm. Yeah, because yeah, I guess yeah, probably I guess you could say it's a different category. Like the way I was thinking about it was because like yeah, the way he typically I've heard him say this is like basically he says like might doesn't make right, but might makes.
Might
Right.
makes,
So like
yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So like without some kind of like might, like to enforce a sort of societal standard, then like that like we just don't have society basically, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, no, yeah, I guess yeah, definitely probably is more of like a sort of just intrinsic sort of like biological advantage than like necessarily a legal one. Yeah, but
Yeah.
like
No, that's true.
it
That's
does,
true.
yeah. Yeah, it is kind of like it is kind of like we do kind of derive our sort of legal basis or like societal basis at least from that sort of biological advantage as well. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's well, everything cultural is
Hmm.
downstream from biology, and everything legal is downstream from culture. So I mean, it,
Hmm.
it all derives from biology technically, and then
Hmm.
you get culture, and culture leads to the way that we establish society or establish legal systems.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's the draft. Criminal justice: women receive less severe sentences for the same crimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Like I've definitely seen those statistics before. I mean, it's obviously like it's a difficult conversation because you can bring up all kinds of other things as well. So like, so like for example, like from the sort of progressive world perspective, um, what they'll typically like this is kind of like a different version of like the same argument that progressives will make for like like discrimination against like black people in the criminal justice system. It's like they
Mm.
also if you're black you also receive harsher sentences and like all those kind of things. So it's like does that mean necessarily that black people are less like have more discrimination against them in the criminal justice system inherently? Like, does that prove that there's like a sort of systemic racism that occurs? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's hard to say. But
What I would be interested in
mhm,
seeing is,
yeah,
I could be wrong, but I think you're referring to the idea of like more black people are arrested for weed possession compared to white people, or I could be wrong about that, but that seems to be like one example that pops to the mind. Um,
hmm,
what I think about in this case is, are black people being uh tried for harsher sentences for the same crime as white people, because if that is the case, I'd be interested in that. But
Hmm.
in this situation, if women and men have the same crime,
Hmm.
technically, Lady Justice is blind, so the law should be blind. It shouldn't consider
Hmm.
your sex or your gender, sorry, your sex or your race or anything like, or your age or anything like that. So justice must be blind. So it seems to be discriminatory for women to get lighter sentences. Um,
Hmm.
but if that's the
Yeah.
case, what do you think about that? Do you think that I don't know how you want to argue against that if it's the case. I guess the real question is it the case?
Um. Yeah, I mean, like on a descriptive sense, like I don't think there's like any doubt about it. The fact that that women receive less harsh sentences. I'm just wondering. Yeah, I don't really know how what we could attribute the cause for that is because like I mentioned with the example with black people and like by the way, yeah, there is I think there is also data for the same thing that like black people in general like receive like harsher sentences like on average. I think there was a study on that, but I'll have to pull it up. But yeah, and so yeah, it like that whole debate is just always makes me wonder like is that sufficient for us to attribute it to like a sort of advantage that like in terms of like we're biased in favor of women or black people or like sorry or white people, or is there like some kind of other confounding variable? I don't know, it's hard to say. But yeah, I do think like just
Yeah.
in a purely descriptive sense there is like for whatever reason there is like a sort of statistical like descriptive like advantage, like if you're a man you're more likely to receive a harsher sentence. Whatever the reason for that being, I don't know, but like yeah, that does seem like obviously to be the case.
Hmm. Okay.
Mhm.
Um. So yeah, I mean that's about everything. But yeah, using
Mhm.
those points, I would say that women are advantaged legally over men in several different categories. But overall, they're more advantaged than men in the law.
Mhm. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that yeah, on those yeah, on a legal sense, yeah, when it comes to the ones you brought up, like the sentencing, yeah, as mentioned, yeah, that is something I agree with. And on the what is it? The um
So there's the
sorry.
Constitution, there's divorce and alimony, there's
Yeah, yeah,
child custody,
yeah,
military service in the draft, criminal justice.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think yeah, overall yeah, I think I agree with most of the like on the legal basis that's probably an advantage. I think you did mention that there was also like you said that on both a legal and a social basis. Yeah, we
Social,
covered the legal
yeah.
basis, yeah. I think another one that we'd also bring up, and I think that this is the one that's where like I would say probably you'd agree as well that like the man has the more advantage, which is like the economic basis. Like you'd agree that, on that level, it's probably the men are more advantage on that playing field, right?
Well, do you think that's an advantage legally or something else?
Like economically, just in terms of like because like you would agree that like money enables you to do like a lot, like in terms of your
Hmm.
abilities to have like to do things in society just in general, right?
Yes, but here's my thing. I wouldn't say that men are advantaged economically. I would say that
Hmm.
men are raised differently than women, and because of the way men are raised, they
Hmm.
tend to earn more money than women because they're conditioned to work hard. They're instilled with discipline. They're instilled with this is how you will become a man. This is how you
Hmm.
will attract women or whatever. You must achieve. And I would say for that reason, I would say that men have harder work ethics than women, and that's why they earn more money.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, we could hypothesize a reason for why that is. Like, yeah, because the thing is, like, we could also do the same thing for, say, like, if we go back to like the legal thing real quick. Like, one thing I was thinking about in regards to the harsher sentencing is like, one way you could argue it is like, like hypothetically, like, maybe the reason women receive less harsh sentencing is because they maybe when they're like actually having the court hearings or whatever, they're not engaged in more kind of reckless sort of mannerisms or ways that might make the like whoever's deciding the case seem to perceive them as more of a threat. that they would require like harsher sentencing. But we could come up with these reasons for why those advantages exist. But like fundamentally, like you would agree like that there is that advantage, like at least on like the economics, right?
Well, okay, here's where I have a problem with the word advantage. When you say
Hmm.
advantage, I think of a clearly distinct reason why somebody has, or yeah, a reason why somebody has, um, hmm. Then again, now that I
Hmm.
think about it, if we look at the criminal justice for women, we didn't see the
Hmm.
reason for why women benefited over men. We only saw that it did happen. If you're
Yeah.
saying that men do make more money than women in the economy, I would
Yeah.
say yes. Is it an
Yeah.
advantage? I would say it depends on the reason for why men make more money than women. I would say that's important.
Hmm. Another reason. Okay. Yeah. Mm.
Because wouldn't you agree that if capitalism is completely fair and it's
Hmm.
completely meritocratic, then it doesn't discriminate based on your sex. It discriminates on your merit, on your competency. And in a perfect
Hmm.
capitalist system, um, you would essentially have the cream of the crop rises to the top.
Hmm.
Is that how?
Yeah.
That's not
Well.
how it goes, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I get what I mean. I mean, like, I obviously, like, I'm not a capitalist in the same way you are, so I
Yeah,
obviously disagree that capitalism is completely meritocratic. But that's like an argument for another day, I guess. But I,
but you understand
I
the
don't know.
analogy.
Mhm.
Yeah. You
Yeah, yeah,
understand
no,
the
I get
analogy
that.
of are men earning more money because they're working harder and they're doing better, or are they earning more money because they have some sort of privilege, like, socially over women? That's why it matters. What is the
Hmm.
advantage specifically? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get that. I think, because I guess there are arguments you can make on that it's like, um, on like why men tend to have like higher paying like jobs and all that. I think there is also like a cultural aspect that you could argue for that. Like I don't remember what it is, but like for example, like men tend to dominate certain fields, like say computer science, engineering, like all of those fields that tend to be pretty high in salary. And a lot of people have made arguments that there seems to be like a sort of cultural tendency for like men to go into those jobs versus women go into jobs that are like nursing, teaching, stuff like that. Like you would agree that that tends to be sort of like the roles that women go into versus what men go into, right?
Yeah, I've heard that. I actually heard this
Hmm.
from Rachel Wilson that women have been
Yeah.
stayed in the same careers for like the past 100 years or something. Like,
Hmm.
with like one difference in their job. Like, women prefer the more social aspects of jobs. They prefer like the medical, what they prefer, like nursing and like the medical, like working in hospitals, working as
Hmm.
teachers. They prefer social interaction a lot more. So
Hmm.
I know that's the case.
Hmm.
Um, the
Yeah.
question of the question of whether are women culturally indoctrinated to go into these fields,
Hmm.
I'm not entirely certain. Now, if I'm speaking
Yeah.
intuitively and anecdotally, to me, it appears that parents aren't telling their kids exactly what to do with their lives. At
Hmm.
least from where I'm coming from, it seems that in my liberal society, my
Hmm.
parents are like, you can do anything you want, just work hard at it. That's
Hmm.
where I'm coming from. So I don't see this social indoctrination of women's parents being like, now make sure when you're going to school you have to pick nursing or teaching or something else that's socially interactive. Like, I don't see that happening. I don't see
Hmm.
society, and when we're talking about society, what we really mean is like, um like online messaging boards, like online communities, YouTube. But we're also talking about locally, like your family, your friends. What are these people telling you to do? That's when we're speaking culturally, that's what I'm saying. And I think that's, what I mean by that. Um,
Yeah.
that's who's
Um.
influencing women to do their careers. I don't see any people in those fields telling women what to do with their lives.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to that, I don't think it's necessarily has to be as explicit as like, okay, the like we're literally being told that men have to go into this field versus that field. I think that there's a bit more of like a subtle nature to how culture can influence like our perceptions of what we want to do with our lives. So like, I think there was an interesting, I think, study or like it was like a something that people
Keep talking
found
for a
that like
minute. Just keep talking.
oh Oh yeah, yeah. All right. Yeah, so there was like some research that like there was like a certain show that I believe was like I forgot the name. It was a pretty popular show though that was like a woman that had like a female protagonist and it was like had to do with I think they she was in like a detective or police role and it was one of the first shows I think to ever have like a woman lead as like a detective or police officer role. And I think that some people who had done research on that on the effects of like that show actually kind of found that there was like an increase in the amount of women going into those fields after they had that sort of cultural like representation of that in like a media setting. Um, and so I think that's kind of one example of a way where it's like it's not an explicit thing where like people are like have been telling women that you have to go into this field versus that field, but it's like based on what we kind of have a picture of what women are like engaged with socially versus what men engage with socially on a cultural thing. And so we've kind of had this sort of I guess how you could put it, like so this sort of a cultural or social framework that men that like have I guess kind of implicitly sort of lead women in one direction versus men in one direction. And like that kind of piece of evidence that I brought up, like if it's true, it kind of suggests that they get influenced in that way by culture. In terms of like if you have more, say, if you were to have more sort of representation of like even just like in a media setting as like a kind of a basic example, it's like okay, it's like if more women can see other women going to that role, that might inspire them to also want to pursue those kind of careers versus like nowadays mostly women see other women in those kind of like teaching and nursing jobs. And it's like I don't know, it's also is a difficult thing because like I don't know how in what other ways we could encourage
Yeah. This
like
sounds
women
like the
to go
chicken and
into
the
that.
egg. This sounds a little
Hmm.
bit like the chicken and the egg. Um,
Hmm.
the
Yeah,
question is which came first? Did women's
yeah.
interests in these things come first, or did the cultural conditioning of women going into these
Hmm.
fields come first? That is an interesting question.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think.
that yeah, go ahead.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess if I had to think, I think it kind of stems just from fundamentally from like the biological fact that like women are like the child bearers, right? And so I think as
Hmm.
a result of that, they tend like we kind of have stem that I think that's probably the originating source of how we came to this sort of cultural idea that women are like the caretakers in our society. And as a result, that's how I guess kind of that's what I would theorize is why culturally we kind of have women going into more sort of caretaking roles, like being doctors, nurse, or like nursing, teaching. Obviously teaching has to do with like, taking care of kids again. So that's kind of how I would see that. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
I do. I think that's a pretty big component.
Mhm.
That well, I think that's a huge component, especially in women's
Yeah.
lives. Is their reproductive component is a big part of their lives, and if they want to make a family, like they probably take on the most risk
Hmm.
in well, no, they obviously do. They don't probably they do. They take on the most risk in family
Hmm.
dynamics. When you decide to have a child with a man, like you are
Hmm.
taking on the biggest risk, the most risk, which is probably why one of the reasons they're so picky in relationships and things like this is when you have sex with a man and you create a child, you are taking a huge risk because a child is going to change everything about your life for the next,
Yeah.
18, 19, 20 years. Like that is basically your life from that point on.
Yeah.
If you have a child, that changes the entire trajectory of your life. So I
Yeah.
do see that being a pretty big component. But I also
Yeah.
think that the nature of women is just
Yeah.
different than men's. So I think that they like different things than men do.
Hmm.
Men tend to have a type of mechanical outlook in life where they and I've heard of this from Jordan Peterson. The differences
Hmm.
between men and women. Men see things more technically, so they see things as components or parts of a bigger machine. and this is really interesting because this goes into our attraction with women.
Hmm.
When women say that men objectify them, they're actually not wrong, because the way that men view women is on their components. This sounds hilarious to say out loud, but men the way men see the world is they see things as components built up to create a whole. So when they see women, they find different parts of a woman attractive, and then they build that up in like a scale in their mind. And
Hmm.
I don't have to go into detail of like how this works, but you understand what I'm saying. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
they see women. I wouldn't say objectively, because that seems like the wrong word.
yeah. Hmm.
They objectify to women to the degree that they are disassembling women, analyzing their parts, and then putting them together into a whole. And
Hmm.
they create this big picture of, what a woman is. And, in like a split second, they know if they're attracted to that woman or not. They know if they're, aroused by that woman or not. Whereas
Hmm.
women kind of need a little bit more time to understand a man, because attraction isn't their biggest thing with a man.
Hmm.
But where was I going with this? I think I was going to tie this back to the difference in
Um,
job choice, career choice.
yeah, yeah, basically like
Yeah, yeah,
economic
okay.
position, yeah, all
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So men see things mechanically. I think that women see things more socially and
Hmm.
less mechanically. So men like technology. They like the mechanics of things. They even view women mechanically. Um,
Hmm.
and so because of this reason, they will often tend to go into technologically based careers and paths. And this is why they'll like things like economics. They'll like philosophy. They like mathematics. They like
Hmm.
engineering. They
Yeah,
like these things that are very mechanical and
yeah,
very materialistic.
yeah,
And women, and not the bad sense of the word materialistic. I'll say physicalistic. And
yeah.
women tend to like social dynamics. So
Hmm.
they'll like, family reunions. They'll love their family. They'll love their friends. They just love social
Hmm.
situations. And this is probably why they like classrooms more, because they enjoy being around kids. They enjoy teaching and growing the next generation. They enjoy the company of other people.
Hmm.
So I view the fundamental differences between men and women's nature is that men are fine. Men tend to be fine learning about like technological and mechanical things in smaller groups, and women like larger social groups where they're less alone and they can have more social calibration with other people.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so the tricky part of that about that whole thing is that like it gets back into kind of like the never-ending debate of like as a like nature versus nurture, right? Like is
Mm.
everything downstream from some kind of like inherent sort of, like biological component that, makes men act in a certain way versus women, or is it all culturally influenced? I don't know, like it's something that like I have not done enough research into know like how like there's a lot of things we don't really understand about how the brain works even to this day. So yeah, it's very hard to say. But no, yeah, I definitely can see. I definitely probably agree. Like on a descriptive sense, is that is a way that is a tendency we see that's different between men and women. It's just yeah, it's hard to
Mm.
point out specifically like with like hard like evidence of whether it's like all to do with just some kind of inherent biological difference in the like that women and men have in like their brains and like their brain chemistry, or if it's like a just like something that is so downstream from culture in some way. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair position. Okay, so let's move on to female social privilege, which is the
Sure.
the other side that I was talking about. I
Mhm.
believe that women are not only legally advantaged, as we just discussed, but I think that they're also socially advantaged, meaning that in society they have more advantages over men.
Mhm.
Um, so I guess we can go over a few cases. So
Sure.
I think number one, their physical attractiveness is a very, very powerful component to their role in society. Um,
Mhm.
and the reason is because attractiveness in science is a very, very powerful indicator of positive social outcomes.
Mhm.
Because people see attractive people as being more competent, likable, trustworthy. And there's been science done on this. Um, And yeah, they basically noticed that you've probably seen studies on this too. They've noticed that
Mm.
people who are prettier tend to get better grades, for like the same amount of work, or they'll have better relationships with the people around them, or especially in school, like they'll thrive in school environments. And I think that this does have a determining. I think that their attractiveness has a determining factor in the opportunities and the feedback that they're given, the positive feedback that they're given. And because
Mm.
I think that both men and women do both benefit from attractiveness. I think because
Mm.
women are more aesthetic creatures than men are,
Mhm.
their attractiveness is much more overpowering than men are.
Mhm.
And so that this can this is probably really big in education, but it's also big in social groups, parties, um,
Mhm.
things like that. And any type of social event, seem to be women are prettier than men. They're just more aesthetic than men because of this, because of the research that there's positive feedback on your physical appearance. Women, generally speaking, have better positive interactions and they have better positive feedback societally in society.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So this kind of relates, I guess, to kind of what we were talking about like from the beginning. Yeah, I mean, it's it is difficult for me to say I guess one thing, like, cause like, yeah, cause I think you kind of acknowledged that like it seems to be kind of a thing that like both attractive men and women have these sort of privileges. But I guess what you're arguing is that women have it to a greater extent. I
Mm-hmm.
guess because, yeah, I guess that's another thing that I'm wondering is that like because when we're talking about attractiveness, like obviously you're making the argument that women, like on some level are just more like attractive than like men, like just intrinsically. I'm just wondering if that's like if that's true in like some kind of objective sense, or if that's just like because I mean we're both guys and I'm presuming we're both straight, so obviously we have that bias to saying that yeah, that's probably the case
Yeah.
that women are more attractive. But like I don't know, does that also hold true for say like on the women's side, they find like some kind of intrinsic thing about other women to be more attractive, or like like gay people as well. I don't know, it's hard to say. Like
Yeah, this is
but
interesting because this is kind of
mhm,
it does delve a little bit into like a philosophical realm where it's like,
mhm,
is aesthetics is the philosophy of beauty or the study of beauty. And the main
mhm,
core of the question there is beauty objective? And
mhm,
I would say that it's, first of all, it's complicated, but second of
mhm,
all, I would say that it is objective, in terms of humanity, or in
mhm,
terms of the human perspective. A beauty is objective, and we know that it is objective. There's lots of science that goes into symmetry, proportions. I don't know if you've ever seen whatever podcast they bring up how there are objective standards across every single culture in the world, where like the most important features are, um, especially for women, is like youth, like clear skin, like symmetry in their face, proportionality of their body, with the
mhm,
rest of itself, including the face. Um, like these things factor into making like an aesthetic piece. And
mhm,
the question of whether women are more aesthetically beautiful than men are in a
yeah.
vacuum, I would say no. In a vacuum, women are not more beautiful than men, because I'm not sure I'm not sure how you analyze a truth claim of what beauty is in the first place. But in
Mhm,
terms of, I guess this would be inductively derived then. This would be empirically derived. Empirically
mhm,
speaking, I would say that beauty is objective. Um,
mhm,
like because of the reasons I said before. But whether women are more beautiful than men, it's hard because
mhm,
so the way I see this is that women can attract by far in a higher degree more men and women towards them. And women can can attract even women. But women who attract other women, and those women aren't lesbians, they might just admire that woman's attractiveness. So they might just want to be their friend because they're attractive. But
Mhm.
also there could be a thing of like, are they friends with them because they're popular because they're attractive, or like it delves into a lot. But I would say that women who are
Mhm.
attractive tend to attract more men and women. Men because men like attractive women, but also women because women admire attractive women because they would want to be that, or they want to emulate that, or some of them just envy that beauty.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that gets into like a very sort of I guess complicated sort of like the philosophical point of like beauty, because like I don't know, in
Mm.
my view, I kind of see beauty as just like something that's just like it seems to me that it should just boil down to sort of like preferences you have in terms of what like I do understand that there's like we do have like the stuff related to, as you mentioned, like symmetry having something to do with like how we find things to be pleasing, but I'm not sure if that's like a universalizable sort of fact, if or if that's just something that's like kind of like a cultural norm, like kind of like certain like the way that I compare it to is something like for example, like music or something like that, where it's like there's like music theory that goes into like composing what I guess like and based on the standards of what they set out in like certain music theories, it determines like
Music
what
objectivism.
creates. Yeah, it's like okay, what creates like a sort of good song, but it's like is that like objective, or is that just like an inner subjective standard that like yeah we have a tendency to have this sort of like humans have a tendency to have this sort of preference for this kind of sound in music, and or this kind of appearance in beauty, and is that like, does that make it objective, or is it just like like a standard that's just widely held, or like, yeah, I don't know. That's I guess like
It's interesting that you bring up music because I think
mm,
this just shows like the broadness of the aesthetics field, because the aesthetics
mm,
field delves into all beauty, and music is a form of beauty. And I would
mm,
say this, I would say that there are objective components and then there are variabilities in the
mm,
beauty of things. So for music,
mm,
technically speaking, I would say that music can be objectively good or bad, because I would say there's a large objective component within music. Like if you just string
mm,
together a bunch of notes, you can't say that's equally as good as Moonlight Sonata. The Moonlight Sonata.
mm,
Like you just can't say that. I The way I see this is music and booty, beauty, well also booty, but music
mm,
and beauty have a large degree of objective not intrinsic, objective goodness to them that people will see, but there's also a variability. So there's like 20% or 10% variability, and there's like 80 or 90% objective goodness to that thing. And this is why you'll notice that there's hierarchies for music and there's hierarchies for beauty. There's hierarchies because we see a sort of social voting on those things. Like you'll notice that some artists have, hundreds of millions of views on their music, and some artists will have thousands.
mm,
In the same way that some Instagram models will have millions of followers, and others will have like thousands. There is an objective component to beauty, and that's where you get the basis for music, where it's like not all sounds are created equal. There's sound, and then there's, I don't know what it's called, like rhythm or something, where it's like
mm,
you make something that is pleasing to the human body, like the sound is pleasing. And then if you introduce a
mm,
little variability into there, it gives it like its unique flavor that makes it different to it compared to other music. And this is why people have different tastes in music, because all people can agree on like a certain basis of
mm,
what good music is, but then there's like a issue of how much variability it makes that music worse or better. And the same thing is true with beauty standards and how we view beauty objectively. There's like, we have like a base level amount of objectivity that we attribute to beauty, but then there's also a portion of variability that many different people look at.
mm. Right. I don't know. That's I'm not sure if I find that because like because it seems that sort of the argument like that you're making is like yeah like we do have like numbers which show that like certain music is yeah like obviously more appreciated by like a much larger swath of the population than others. I'm not sure if that necessarily bridges the gap though to objectivity because like I imagine like you're an ANCAP, you'd agree like for example that value is subjective, right? Like
Yes.
and so it's like yeah, and because like for example like if we take it if we use like an analogy of like say in an economic sense like the most successful like restaurant in the world is what McDonald's. Does that mean that like on like is there like some kind of objective component to food as well that makes McDonald's like objectively the best food? I don't know.
But yeah,
Um,
as an objectivist, I
because
would
it
say yes, because well, there's like a marketing component is there. Yes, you're true about
Mhm.
that. So it's like
Yeah.
is necessarily the best stuff will always rise to the top. Not always, and that is
Mhm.
because of that marketing component. Like you said, like McDonald's has a powerful it has a powerful role in each of its field, and its branding and its marketing and
Mhm.
the the flavor of its food and
Yes.
how it distinguishes itself from all the other restaurants because of all those components in a
Mhm.
market system where people all are able to vote with their dollar.
Yes.
McDonald's would rise to the top because of all those components. But I would
Mhm.
say that there are some things that when I say that something is objectively beautiful or something that is objectively valuable, I'm not talking
Mhm.
about in a deductive sense where like separate from humans it would be true. I'm talking about
Okay.
in an inductive sense where it's not, and this is the key distinction. It's not socially constructed. It's a
Mhm.
pattern. It's a universally recognizable pattern in human behavior. Where it's like, why do so many people like hamburgers?
Mhm.
Is it just a completely random phenomena that so many people love hamburgers? I would say no. It's because the
Mhm.
human body, biologically speaking, has a a chemical reaction to that hamburger that induces a deep level of pleasure when you consume it, and that's a universal pattern across all humans. When they eat that hamburger, there's something objectively tasty about it because millions, hundreds of millions, even billions of people will eat that hamburger and they'll love it. It's not because it's a random it's like it's just it's a coincidence that they all love the hamburger. No, it's not a
Mhm.
coincidence. It's because in a human perspective, it is objectively tasty. Does that make sense?
Um, Sort of, but like I mean, you would agree that there are probably like a pretty like because there are definitely like a lot of people who straight up don't like McDonald's hamburgers, right? Like even though like the
Yeah, but that's
vast
got to be
majority do, right?
very few amount of people, right?
Yeah, I mean obviously like that's why McDonald's is so profitable, but like
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like it's I don't know because like yeah, but like even if there is like even if there's only like a couple like that's still it's not like I don't know if you can say it's universal like a universal fact that it is good because like you can always find someone who like just straight up says it that they don't like it like that's and that's kind of like the thesis of like I guess why we tend to say like value is subjective, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
everything that like we value like when you say like we value like people value the taste of the hamburgers that McDonald's gets. Yeah, that's why they and if they do, that's why they spend their money there. And as it turns out, most people value that taste, which is why they do. But some other people don't, and so they take their money and their value to other restaurants. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like,
But the key importance here is that all
mhm,
the restaurants, and I understand what you're saying. There's variability where it's like some people don't like hamburgers, like they would prefer a
mhm,
taco, right? Or they
yeah,
prefer a donut or something. I
yeah.
understand what you're saying there, but I'm trying to get rid of this notion that it's random. It's not random that people love certain foods. It's just not right because
Oh,
you could say that like some people like to eat garbage. Um,
mhm.
is that is that like does that have a God? How do I articulate this the proper
Yeah, I
way?
think I think I kind of understand what you're saying. Actually, it might just have to do like because like like yeah, if you I think if what you're saying is just like sort of there's like a reason for why people have these preferences. Yeah, like I mean,
Yes,
obviously I don't think it's
exactly.
random.
There's
Like
a reason.
I mean we're both determinists, so obviously we probably we would say there is like a chain of reasons that leads to every single like uh
Phenomena.
thing process we have in our brains and like why we have the feelings we do and all that. Yeah, I guess like I guess yeah, if you're using the word objective in like that sort of sense, just to say that there's like that it's not like arbitrary. It's not that there's no just like randomly like yeah, I would agree that like in that sense there's some objectivity. I was thinking of objective in like the philosophical sense of like mind
Yeah.
dependent versus mind independent.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
see what you mean
exactly.
though. Yeah.
That's where it gets tricky, right? Because
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not speaking about the philosophy of objectivism. I'm talking about the pattern, the recognizable pattern in human behavior that tends to see something. Because
Yeah.
objectivism is deductive, and technically everything related to humans is, like inductive. Like we see patterns rise and then patterns fall in human behavior. But we do see patterns, and that's what matters. That the pattern itself.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Okay.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that makes sense to me.
that's
Yeah.
that's all to say that back to the objectivity of beauty, in the
Hmm.
same way that there are patterns that we view food that is for the most part universally loved. Not all, but
Hmm.
like for the most part, like we see McDonald's is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We see Taco Bell is probably a multi-dollar industry, billion-dollar industry. We see
Hmm.
companies that are universally loved by people. It's not random that
Hmm.
that happened. It's a pattern. It's they have found something in the human psyche that humans value that thing, and that's why. In the
Hmm.
same way, there is a degree of objectivity, or I guess a better word would be a universalized pattern that we see in beauty,
Hmm.
and a lot of this beauty seems to be found in women.
Hmm.
So, for whatever reason, it must be ingrained in our human psyche that men and women alike just find women to be more aesthetically pleasing creatures.
Hmm.
Um, and because of that reason, women are loved more, they're admired more. There are consequences to it, of course. Like they're envied more, and this can close them off from interactions. But I would say for the most part, it's usually a tool for their opportunity. So if you're in a class, like your teacher will love you more because you're attractive. You're more
Hmm.
charismatic because you're more socially calibrated. Um,
Hmm.
you're you're a better student because people will like talk to you more, and they'll be like, oh, you're such a good student, or they'll say things that they wouldn't say to an ugly person. Like they'll just interact with you more in general because you're attractive. And I would say that
Hmm.
women are just more aesthetic creatures than men.
Mm. Mm, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah, it's very difficult because it's just like we spent like quite a significant amount of time talking about stuff like food and music and all that, and like there
Mm-hmm.
is obviously like we mentioned like there's like a sort of universalizable, well, not like 100% universalizable, but that there's like a very, very large percent of population that we can point to that has a preference for this thing versus that thing. When it comes to like men and women, it's difficult because I don't know, like how much can we really
How do you measure
quantify that?
it?
Like yeah, yeah, it's like because like because like when it comes to like like obviously when it comes to like men, like I can grant obviously that like when men probably all, well, not all men obviously because like gay people, but like all straight men have probably placed women as more attractive, and that's a very sizable portion of the population. I guess where it kind of disconnects from me is I wonder if it's the case also for women, which is the thing that I've talked about before. I do they view like because yeah, I don't know, like what would you say to that? Do you think that there's like
So
something there as well for
yeah, I'll
yeah.
take a step back, and then so you want evidence for this claim that women are more universally aesthetic, and I have some sort of evidence that is intuitive, and I'll see
Mm,
what you think about it. But I would say we can
yeah,
actually derive this evidence from society itself, from
yeah,
culture.
yeah.
And that evidence would be that if you ask men and women Who
Mhm.
would you, in just like a vacuum sense, like you don't explain the reason why, in a
Yeah.
vacuum sense, would you rather hang out with, five attractive women or five attractive men?
Yeah.
I intuitively believe that more people would just say the five attractive women, not given any context whatsoever. Would you just rather be hanging out with these people? There's no reason or rhyme to it. Just would you? I would say that
Mhm.
most people would say they would just rather be with five attractive women, because if you're with five attractive women, everything sounds fun at that point. Like
Yeah, I
basically
mean,
everything
like,
sounds.
but
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 yeah, go ahead.
yeah, yeah, but that's the thing, right? It's like I agree, and I hold that intuition as well. But what I'm wondering is at the back of my head, I'm always wondering is that like because obviously there's like we both of us have that sort of bias in the sense that like
Newer
obviously like
guys.
you and I are gonna say like yeah, of course women over men. But I'm wondering if that holds true. Yeah, like I don't know. It's like if that is so yeah that bias that the factor that there's a bias there is making me question if that would hold true for like women as well.
That's fair. That's fair. What I would
Yeah.
say is, I would
Hmm.
say that it's probably, I would say that it's probably indisputable that all men would answer they'd rather hang out with the five attractive women. What I would
Yeah.
say is in dispute is, can you match females' answers with the opposite? So could you get most or even all women to say that they'd rather hang out with the five attractive guys than the five attractive females? That's what we would need to analyze. And if it's at the same rate as men, then my
Hmm.
evidence doesn't work. But if women would rather hang out more often with attractive females rather than attractive men, then that is evidence for my case. So we would have to, it would
Hmm.
have to hinge on that idea right there. And I
Yeah.
personally don't know, but
Yeah.
just
Mm.
from hearing people talk what they prefer to do and hearing women's answers, it sounds to me like women prefer to, or women are okay with not being with men. They're okay with
Mm.
like being out with like their girlfriends and things like this. And like, but again, that's not in a vacuum. That's sort of like, we're going out to party with our friends, or we're just going on a girls' night out or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
I would think in situations like that, the women would probably want to be going out with their girlfriends rather than like
Yeah.
going out with a group of men. And I would
Yeah.
think if you switch that around, if men could go out with like their boys, like they're five boys, and let's say that their boys are attractive, they would rather go out with five attractive women. So that's what I can see. But again, there's a lot of
Yeah.
factors baked into there.
Yeah, I actually agree with that intuition as well. But yeah, like that's what I was going to bring up is also yeah, there is a lot of factors because it's like there's a lot of cultural, I guess, things that we could point to.
Yeah,
Like
like negative incentivizations from women who would
yeah,
be
yeah,
seen as like
yeah,
promiscuous if they're going out with
exactly.
five attractive men.
Yeah. That yeah, if they're hanging out with five men, like yeah, that's there's that perception. And then there's also like kind of yeah, like we've seen this kind of rise of like modern day like sort of third wave feminism where it's like you have all these women who are like, oh, I don't like men or like I hate men and all that stuff.
Kill them all.
Yeah.
Kill all
Yeah.
men.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know how much of those things play into it as well. That's like, there's kind of like this idea that like they don't want to be seen with like men due to those cultural factors versus they actually have this intrinsic, sort of appreciation for women over men. I don't know. Yeah, it's very, very difficult to think that. I'm not sure if that's a conclusive answer for.
Dude, I saw this meme that was like showing the different phases in feminism, and I think the first one was like women want to be equal with men. And then the second
Mhm.
phase of feminism was like women hate men. And then the third phase of feminism is like women become men. That was a great meme.
Yeah, that's
Um,
yeah, that's kind of funny.
but yeah, I mean, so
Mhm.
it is hard to tell
Mhm.
if women are universally reveled. Is that the right word?
Mhm.
Reveled, revered.
Revered?
If they're more
Yeah.
revered than men are, I would say
Yeah.
intuitively,
Yeah.
socially, women are more revered than men because of their
Yeah.
attractiveness. I would say that if you look at the objectives, I mean, and this is kind of a side thing, but like if you look into like stories, I know this is weird,
Mhm.
but if you look at the narrative and the archetypal differences between men and women, women are
Mhm.
always the objective in stories and like meta narratives, right? Like the
Yep.
princess.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
save the princess because the princess is the
Mhm.
objective. Why is the princess objective? Well, because the princess is intrinsically valuable in a story
Mhm.
setting. And I think that says something about society where we view the women as the objective. And I don't even disagree with that. I don't know if anybody does disagree with that, but I do agree with the fact that like the beautiful princess is inherently valuable to society. And I don't know exactly the reason for that. I think part of it is
Mhm.
our baked in instincts that make us perceive that. But if you look also
Mhm.
at the male or the masculine point of view, the masculine
Mhm.
point of view is like the entire climb of the story. The whole point
Mhm.
is for the man to face adversity to get to the princess. And the
Mhm.
man in this narrative, the man is not intrinsically valuable. What's valuable is his competence and his resilience and his perseverance to get to the princess. Will he save the princess? Can he, destroy the adversity that's um, creating an obstacle for him to save the princess? The woman in the meta narrative is inherently good, and the man
Mhm.
must kind of destroy everything in the way of him getting to the princess to save her because she's intrinsically good. I would say that culturally speaking, and this is the same reason that we have the draft for the men and not the women. I would say that society sees women as more valuable. And I would say
Mhm.
that the reason for that is because they're attractive, but also they're it's like the feminine nature. Like we want to protect and preserve the feminine nature at all costs.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, it's difficult because I definitely share like a lot of those intuitions as well. I'm just wondering, like, yeah, because like I said, it all goes back to me. Just like I'm always just wondering in the back of my mind, like, if we were having this conversation with like the woman, like, would she share those intuitions? It's always just hard for me to picture. But no,
Yeah.
I definitely see your point there. In regards to yeah. I mean, like, yeah, when it comes to the narrative stuff, like, yeah, I do see that is actually kind of an interesting point in regards to how we kind of frame like the common like cultural sort of view of like the man's role in the story versus the woman's. Although, like, yeah, I guess like from a yeah, you could also argue that yeah, that's those kind of stories probably do also are also written in a way to appeal to like male sort of sensibilities. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's hmm. Yeah, like I would say, like, so far, I intuitively I agree with pretty much everything you're saying. I'm just wondering, like, yeah, there's just some things like my mind that I don't know if it's like a universalizable thing. But yeah.
Yeah, that's I understand that position. I
Mm-hmm.
would just say that I guess for my final point for my why I believe females have more social privilege than
Mm-hmm.
males is just for the sheer fact that um they're just more aesthetically superior to men. I intuitively believe that, and I believe because of that, people just love women. Men love women. Women love women, and
Mm-hmm.
and then I wouldn't say it's true the other way. I wouldn't say that men just love men and women just love men. I think it degrees the
Mm-hmm.
degree is a lot more on the character of the man. And the same thing's true for the woman, but I would say it's just to different degrees. The character of the
Mm-hmm.
woman still matters, but her beauty is like an integral part of that. And for a man, the most integral part for his thing is his character. But
Mm-hmm.
that's just an intuitive argument at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Like I said, like, I definitely hold that intuition. Uh, yeah, it's just at the back of my mind. I'm always wondering if it's like if that intuition just comes as a sort of cultural sort of bias that I have for my sort of way I see the world. But like,
Mm-hmm.
definitely, I don't think I disagree with that inherently. Um, yeah, I'm just wondering, like, if yeah, I guess, yeah, it is just kind of a thing that, like, if I saw evidence of that, it's there's also like it's not just like my sort of perspective, but it's also kind of shared even among like people who have like who are like biologically different from me, like women or like even gay people or whatever. Like that would definitely change my perspective, and I'd probably lean like stronger towards your sort of thesis that it's like there's like an objective advantage here that we can point to.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So moving on.
Okay.
This one's also a little bit controversial.
Yeah.
Women having political authority leads to communitarianism. Now, I would say this is kind of a descriptive claim, but I would
Okay.
say that communitarianism is not a good thing for society. And that would be the, I guess, like the prescriptive claim.
Mhm. Okay.
But yeah, we can
So
start with the descriptive claim first. If you think that women leadership often or tends to go more towards communitarianism than male leadership.
So when you say communitarianism, I'm assuming that like, do you mean like a sort of collective versus individualist? Is that like the distinction we're going with, or is there something that you mean by communitarian?
Yeah, so what I mean by communitarian is the way that men tend to organize themselves is in hierarchies,
Yeah,
typically competence hierarchies.
yeah,
Uh, and this is because, like, a man will walk up to a man, they'll shake hands, they'll be like, all right, so what do you do for work? This is the whole fresh and fit adage. And
mm,
then when women get together, they'll hug each other and be like, okay, so how's the family been? And you
hmm,
might raise the critique of like, is this social or not? And that's a good question to ask. But women seem to um, prefer social dynamics, and they tend to be, let's say, more sympathetic, or yeah, they seemingly seem more sympathetic towards people, and they'll want to step in and help somebody more often. And if a kid's like on the street starving, like they'll be like, yo, this is not okay, we need to do something about it. And they'll want to be, they'll want to be more peaceful and collective, and yeah, and peaceful with each other, and things like that. And they'll want to be more equal with each other too. So
hmm,
communitarianism just means that they have like a very strong inclination to have equality with their community, and everybody looks after each other, and it's very like altruistic. On the opposite
mm,
end would be the masculine or the male. They see things in hierarchies, which is that they believe that competency and merit should be what decides how the hierarchy will form. And we can
mm,
see this in things like economics, where we usually, most Western countries use capitalism, not capitalism, but they use like a market base
yeah,
um, to kind of establish how that works. And they also have governmental structures, which men created the governmental structures, and there's chains of command with those governmental structures. Um,
mhm.
but do you see that difference between men and women? Do you not see that difference?
Um, yeah, I think so far as like the purely descriptive claim, I guess the way that I would kind of square it is that like yeah, I think I'd probably agree generally because it kind of seems like we can kind of break this down between like even like for example like when it comes to political ideology, like obviously like left wing ideology tends to be more like kind of in that sense of like
The
for like
communitarian,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, bringing more equality and like all those things. And whereas like the right wing tends to like point out the more like kind of individualist, like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, that sort of thing. And it does seem to be the case that like when we look at polls and all that, that like women tend to be more like like
more
kind of
liberal,
overwhelmingly
more
more like
democratic.
liberal left wing. Yeah, yeah. So I think just on that statistical fact, yeah, I guess descriptively that does seem to be the case. Obviously, I would disagree with on the prescriptive level, but yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get to that in a second.
Sure.
I've always found this really interesting, like the dynamics between men and women, because
Mhm.
it's funny. We've like recorded this for thousands of history. Even if we look at Taoism, I think it's Taoism where we have yin and yang. Yin and yang is like the balance of like the universe, right? And it's like the idea
Mhm.
that you have the dark and the light, you have the passive and the aggressive,
Mhm.
strong and the weak,
Mhm.
possibly, but like, and then like the introverted, the extroverted, and like there's all these archetypes integrated into yin and yang. And you kind of see this
Mhm.
also like in economics and especially politics, where you see the left wing and the right wing. The
Yeah.
right wing seems to represent masculinity,
Mhm.
and that they believe in strong hierarchies. They believe in competence hierarchies. They believe in meritocracy, and they
Mhm.
believe in, like you said, independence. Those are like
Yeah.
masculine virtues or masculine beliefs. Whereas
Yeah.
the left wing sort of celebrates and wants more equality. They want more liberalism. They want more openness. They want more
Yeah.
cultural diversity. They want more equality.
Yeah.
And so I've always found that yin and yang very, very interesting. And I think
Yeah.
as a libertarian, the correct answer is the combination of the two, which is the balance. And the
Yeah.
balance is that men set the hierarchy with the economy, and then
Mhm.
women create the openness and the comfort of the society, and so they work together
Mhm.
perfectly. And so that's why I think politics is a really bad idea. But to get to the point of this all,
Yeah.
which was to say, well, I forgot what your claim was. I'm sorry, bro.
Well, I think all I really said was like I agree with the descriptive claim, but yeah, I think we probably disagree on the prescriptive of like
Right.
whether it's a bad or good thing. Yeah.
The prescriptive. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I see communitarianism as worse in regards to capitalism, and this is kind
Mhm.
of a capitalism debate. But
Yeah.
I see that meritocratic markets are superior than like equality based markets. I just see that merit will put the most effective leaders in charge, and the
Mhm.
most effective people will have the highest efficiency, and it will lead
Mhm.
to the best overall benefits for society in general. Whereas the equality society strives for something more morally based, where it's like you want to have safety nets and you want to save all the people from sliding through the cracks,
Mhm.
at the expense of a slightly less efficient economy. And so I see that's the fundamental difference.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah. So like, we obviously disagree with this from our like first debate. I don't know how much we want to get into it here, but like, yeah, like obviously,
Yeah.
I kind of reject some of the like economic arguments that you would use for your basis and like all of that. Um, I don't know. Like, yeah, we can. I don't know if we want to get into it again, or like if we want to have maybe have that argument for another day. But
We don't
yeah,
have
like,
to. But
mhm.
I mean, I guess you would say that. Um, would you agree with the descriptive claim that like women are more communitarian and men are more hierarchical, or do you think that's generally fine?
Yeah. Like I said, yeah. Descriptively, like that kind of induction, sorry, that I made before with like the liberal versus right wing. It does kind of seem that like women fall into the left wing ideology, which seems to have more in common with what the communitarian thing that you mentioned is. So yeah, descriptively, I agree. It's just like, yeah, obviously prescriptively we have a pretty big difference here because I'm left wing and you're libertarian. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
True. That's true. Okay, cool. So moving on.
Mhm.
This is a big one in the red pill. Marriage
Yeah.
is just too risky. It's just too risky.
Too risky. Okay. Um. Is it? Do you mean like too risky in general, or too risky for men, or too risky for women?
It's
Like, is there
too
any?
risky for men.
Hmm. Okay. Um, that's interesting. Why would you say so? I guess.
Okay. So the reasons for this is because, like I said before, I believe that there is a bias towards women in the legal system, and that for whatever reason, I would say it's because of their aesthetics, and kind of their nature too. All people of all kinds, men and women, favor women, and they have an instinctual desire to protect women, and because of this, men will often get ripped off, more often than women. And
Right.
so for this reason, I think that the same thing it's the case for divorce, where we kind of already talked about this. Women tend to get they tend to win in like divorce court, or they tend to get some sort of benefit in divorce court. And so essentially what we have is a man can be, working really hard and be in a relationship with a woman. He can marry that woman, and the woman can pretty much do anything within the constraints of the law that she wants. Like, she could have an affair with another person. She could, whatever. She can do some I don't know. She can do something that is not that the man does not like, and then she can divorce the man. And when she divorces the man, she can probably take up to half, if not more, of his resources, just for the simple fact that they were married. And so what you have is a man lost his time and he lost his resources to someone he, he was deeply involved with or deeply cared for. So I see marriage as just too risky for men nowadays because I see that the law favors women.
Okay, I see. Just real quick before I'll respond to that. Just letting you know, like I may need to head off in about like an hour, 1.5 hours.
Oh
But
yeah,
I've been
that's
really
fine.
enjoying the discussion, and we should definitely set up another one sometime later if we come up with another topic. But
Oh yeah, bro, I
yeah,
love. We don't have to go for much longer because we've been talking for a while already. And I wasn't
yeah,
expecting to go for this long, but yeah, I'm loving the
yeah, that's
conversation.
all. Yeah, it's all good. All right, yeah. So, but to get back to that, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, like, obviously, like, I'm not really like the type of person who's going to argue in favor of like marriage necessarily. I don't really view marriage as like a sort of like necessary thing that like a super valuable thing. Like, I think this argument would probably be more interesting if you were to have it against someone like, for example, like Andrew Wilson, who's like, he's a guy who will argue that like, we need people to be married because married people are happier and he
Yeah,
makes all these arguments and like he uses that to say like, oh, that's why women are bad because they divorce too much and like all that stuff. Yeah.
but
But like yeah, for me, yeah.
Vexy, you've seen him on the Whatever podcast when he
Yeah.
plays the devil's advocate, where he's like, it's more interesting every day that Brian shows me the argument of the secularist argument on marriage. Have you seen that?
Oh, I don't know if I watched that one. He's been like on a thousand podcast episodes at this point, so
Yeah,
I
he
don't
has
know
been
which
a
one,
lot.
but
He kind of brings it
yeah.
up once in a while, but he
Yeah.
essentially says he does play the devil's advocate there,
Hmm.
against women on the podcast, where he
Oh, okay.
says, I just don't see the advantage of marriage for secular men. I just don't see it because they don't care about the covenant with God. And the thing is, they can get
Mm.
everything out of a relationship with a woman as their girlfriend rather than
Hmm.
being married. Like they can simply get everything they want out of a relationship without being married. So what is the point of them getting married?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, on its face, I probably actually agree with that argument. I don't think like I think obviously there's probably like I mean you could say that they're, like on a very like sort of it's not and like this isn't really all that strong of an argument, but it's just like on a purely preferential level, it just might be a thing that like people see value in the sort of like that sort of tradition of marriage, even if it has nothing
Mm-hmm.
to do with God. But like outside of that, yeah, I don't really see the value of marriage too much either. So yeah, I probably don't disagree with that actually.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the way I see it because
Hmm.
Andrew's actually, opened my eyes to this opinion or this
Yeah.
belief, but he really opened my eyes to the idea that marriage was originally a covenant, and it
Hmm.
was Christian derived. Um, and so like people have, over hundreds of years been kind of hijacking marriage because it was like a traditional thing in our culture where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you just get married with a person who you love the most and you're promising to, stay with this person for the rest of your life. But it but in a secular sense or a secular perception, marriage doesn't marriage is fine if
Hmm.
the state isn't involved. But at the same time, even without state involvement, marriage isn't really necessary. It's kind of just like it is a traditional celebration of like two people who are like, it used to be monogamously, um, what is the word? Uh, Kind of promising themselves to each other.
Each
And
other,
like
yeah.
that was kind of like the original thought. It's like we have vows and we're going to take these vows, and it used to be before God. We're going to take these vows before God. But in a secular sense, then they turned it to we're going to take these vows to each other. That through sickness and through health, like I will always be with you monogamously. Like we are basically together now. We're in this for the long haul, and until death do us part. Like that's a thing. But that was
Mhm.
originally a concept of a Christian covenant between, man and wife, um, and God. But we
Mhm.
kind of, liberal society kind of hijacked the idea of marriage. Um, but now that the state is so deeply integrated with marriage, and there's so
Mhm.
many legal benefits that women have in marriage, why ought a man even get married, especially a secular man? Like, I would make the case that Christian men shouldn't get married because of the legal
Mhm.
component, but without the legal component, why ought secular men get married anyway?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I probably don't even disagree really. Like, I've never really been a super like, oh, marriage is a good thing sort of guy. Like, I've actually always had that kind of opinion that like I don't really see much of a point in it. Yeah, I mean, it just seems purely like people do it purely just out of like a tradition thing. Like it's something that's been ingrained into our culture as this really valuable, significant thing that we do to sort of signify that two people are getting together to spend their like the rest of their lives together. But like, yeah, I mean, by all means, like I probably, yeah, I think we 100% agree on this. I don't really see the value of marriage, like just in general, not even just for men or women, but just in general.
Nice. Okay, cool. That's great. Okay, so I mean, those are pretty much all my biggest points on the red pill. But kind
Hmm.
of like an overview.
Yeah.
Seeing how I laid out the red pill today, does that kind of change your perspective on what you used to think the red pill was? Has it changed any of your opinions on what it means to be red pill aware?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that like there's definitely like yeah the way that you presented is definitely a lot more reasonable than like like because usually when it comes to all these discussions like you usually just see the most extreme opinions float around um and it's like yeah but when it comes to the things that you've laid out like I don't necessarily disagree with any of it. Some of it I'm a bit more skeptical on, and I think there's like I'm like it would be interested in seeing like data to support like some of the conclusions, but I think that like overall, like yeah, I don't think we disagree on much, honestly. Like I think it's yeah, like your position is pretty reasonable, from what we've discussed. So
Sick. Yeah. I noticed that, well, it's funny because we do have lots of like people who will make flashy comments and things like this. Like, like when Myron said, only get married after you slept with 50 women, going through all these dates, make over 100K a year, past the age of 30. And we tend
yeah,
to like get these preconceived notions of like what the red pill is. Because like you
yeah,
said, like the flashiest, the largest audiences, things like this. But it's important to keep in mind that there's a lot of factors that play into the red pill, what it truly is, which is it is primarily a descriptive force. And from that descriptive force, you will get different denominations like the fresh and fit denomination, the Andrew Tate denomination, the
mhm,
rational male, the Rollo Tomasi, has kind of a milder denomination because he mostly focuses on the descriptive with slight variability into the prescriptive. But you'll have all these
mhm,
types of different red pill, channels and flavors of the red pill who have their own prescriptive beliefs about what you do with the tool that is the red pill, with this knowledge. What should you
yeah,
do with this knowledge now that you have it? And
yeah,
so the most important thing for me to take people to take home is that at the end of the day, it is just knowledge. And
yeah,
with knowledge, you can destroy or you can create. And that is, ultimately up to the person who wields the knowledge.
yeah. No, yeah. I think that's probably like a good point as well. Like I think probably where the type of red pillar that I have the strongest disagreement would probably be the ones who make a lot of like prescriptive statements using the sort of like sort of value judgments. Like you've seen like I don't know if you've seen like I think there are certain like there's a lot of red pillars who like hold like really extreme opinions like oh we shouldn't allow women to vote and stuff like that. And that's probably like
Andrew
when you
Wilson.
yeah. Yeah, Andrew Wilson. I think I've also
Yeah.
seen. I don't know if Myron is the fresh and fit guy, right?
Uh huh. Yeah.
I think I've seen him say the same thing, though. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, like yeah,
Yeah. What do they say?
yeah,
Revoke? Is it revoke the 19th or
yeah, yeah,
whatever?
yeah, yeah, something like that. Like yeah,
Um.
I would also disagree with those
Yeah.
like prescriptive claims, but yeah, but yeah, descriptively, yeah. I mean, a lot of what you said makes sense to me. So
Well, listen. It makes sense in the idea that if we see that more women tend to vote Democrat, I
Hmm.
understand where the right authoritarian patriarchs are coming from when they say we
Yeah.
should take the ability of the woman to vote away. I just think
Yeah.
it's an overly complex answer to a simple solution, which would be just take away everybody's ability to wield the centralized authority.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
if we do have a state, I understand where they're coming from, where it's like we want to what's the word? We want to keep capitalism from going away. Like that's the worst way I could have said it. But
Mm.
we want to protect capitalism. We want to
Yeah.
protect. We want to have keep a reign on the government, keep it small, and like something like a minarchy, right? A night watchman state. We want to keep the
Hmm.
government small, and we want them to, keep their eyes on the road. They're doing something a very simple task, and we'll have regulations and things when we see the need to arise. But
All
when
right.
they see the female vote tends to give more power to the government, it turns the government into like something closer to, like socialized welfare and
Yeah.
all these other factors. It just seems like they're getting out of control. They're creating all these departments like they'll fund, I don't know, whatever they fund. They'll have centralized banks. They'll have the FDA. They'll get
Hmm.
they'll get more with the what's it called, the international drug people. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the right leaning people will be like, no, we need government. We just
Yeah.
need to keep it small. And then the left leaning people will like, no, we need like big government because we need big
Hmm.
daddies. We need big, strong daddies to, protect us and protect all the little people. And so that is kind of like why the patriarchy wants to get away of the female vote, because they see it as they can protect the women better than the women can protect themselves. And I think there is a degree of truth to that. But I would say essentially just take away the big gun so that nobody can use it. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. No, obviously, like my opinion. Like, obviously, I
I
disagree
do
with
know your
like
opinion. Yeah.
pretty much all that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It is interesting. Like, but I definitely kind of get that perspective. Like, yeah. Obviously, if it'd be really beneficial to if you hold that ideology that's opposed to what women generally go for to like want to restrict that. It is interesting because like um, although like sometimes like when it comes to the alt right people, it's really weird their political strategy because I don't like this is like a tangent, but like I remember like there was a big discussion about the last election between Trump and Harris because I believe Trump actually got like probably I think most of the what was it like the Latino vote. I think it was like and like obviously like in the U.S. I believe like a lot of most Latinos are like immigrants,
Yeah.
and like it's that was one of the things that's like it was really funny because like wow, it's like how are they winning all these votes despite being like the most like anti-immigration party? It's weird, but
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, but
It is
yeah,
interesting.
mhm,
That is an interesting conversation because you see that Trump got the popular vote and it makes you kind of wonder why. And I'm
mhm,
sure there's millions of factors that go into the reason for that, but
mhm,
um, I think that people have been seeing a lot of chaos and high prices in the last 4 years. I think
mhm.
I could be wrong, but I think the biggest voter issue was like economic issues or something like that.
Yeah, no,
Immigration
yeah,
was also kind of a big one, but I think everybody's like, yo, like shit sucks right now. Like there's no jobs. The prices of everything are increasing. I'm not getting a raise. If anything, I'm getting fired. So it's like things just suck right now. And they may have seen Harris being the vice president of Biden, and they're like, is she gonna be the same as Biden? If are we
yeah.
gonna have more of this? And that definitely could have been the perception of voters.
Yeah, no, okay. I'm actually like because I did a bit of digging into that as well. Like I'm pretty confident that was the reason as well because I think there was someone posted this statistic that was like I think where in like pretty much every like when inflation started like kind of rising almost everywhere around the world, wherever there was like a sort of election going on, the incumbent pretty much always lost because it's just like everybody just like looks at the price rising and then they look at the current leader and they're like okay, you must be responsible. And then so they kicked them out and got replaced the leader for another one.
Shit, that happened for
Yeah.
everyone except for Obama, I guess.
Yeah,
Obama
yeah.
got that 2 terms.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. I see interesting human nature to that because that definitely could be a thing. It's like people saw Trump come in and they're like, oh, we don't. I don't know why they voted against Trump. Honestly, I don't. They probably thought that Biden, because I don't think the economy was a big issue back then, and so
Hmm.
they're like, oh, we don't care about economics. We want someone who's more moral than Trump, so we're gonna go for Biden because we're in a good
Yeah.
position, so we can be generous because we're in a good position. And then we had Biden, and they're like, oh shit, prices suck. And then like, okay, well, we have to go for the opposite extreme. We have to go for Trump. And so that might have been why they chose Trump. And then it could be, dude, it just could be a cycle. It could be like, okay, we're good again. Let's be more generous. And then who knows? It could loop over and over again.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, yeah, definitely it's yeah, definitely like the reasons seem to be like purely economic because like yeah, if we're talking on like a political level, like Trump has done all kinds of like absolutely insane shit that like anybody who knows about like it's just like oh this guy like probably I don't know how he's like still able to like hold office for that, but like yeah, but definitely like the
Yeah,
economy was like the biggest factor, you know.
yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, that's definitely interesting. So, do you have any
Mhm.
closing thoughts?
Um let's see. I mean, in conclusion, yeah, I guess in terms of the red pill, I definitely don't think it's well. At least my impressions of it generally have. I don't think it's as insane. I guess as like what the I was seeing from like the clips from just like the most extreme takes. Yeah, I think the definitely there's a lot of things to think about in terms of sort of how we view society and like roles of men and women and how they interact. I think it's a pretty interesting conversation. Um, yeah, I don't think we necessarily had like a lot of super strong disagreements, or at least the ones that we did. You know, we kind of both acknowledged that there's like probably there's definitely some room for exploration or like research that we're not too sure about. So yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know. I think overall we're not too much in disagreement on most of it. So
damn straight. I think
Mhm.
everybody can be red pill aware and just take it differently. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
Like you said, there's different denominations, right? So it's
there's
like
different
yeah,
denominations. Yeah, like there could be like red pill ultra feminist women. Like that could be a thing. It would be weird as hell. But it could definitely
yeah.
be a thing. They're like, yeah, we know we're feminine and we like these positions, but we still hate you or something like that. I
That'd be
don't know.
a funny position. It's like yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like ultimately, I think the red pill is knowledge, and that's gonna be the most important thing for people to take away.